everyone. Give me 2 seconds because I just realized that I did not set up the Rumble streaming keys correctly. Oh gosh, we just got out of a spy stream earlier, not too long ago, and I had the Rumble keys set up for the spy stream Rumble, and now I have to change them to make sure we are in fact streaming on Rumble. Hang on, Rumble. Hang on. I'm going to get you, I promise. I just need to reload the stream, and hopefully it'll go through this time. Hopefully, hang on. I will edit it to remove it, and then I will edit it back again to add it. Remove Rumble. And then add Rumble. This is what I do for the people on Rumble. Hello, Rumble. We made it. I can see I'm working over there now. Sorry about the slight delay. Hang on. I also need to change my audio settings because I apparently didn't do anything while I was on my break. Hang on. We were just in a spy stream. And when I do spy stream, I have to have different audio settings. And it may not sound different to you guys, but like it echo. It's like it's two of me in my headphones. It's an echo. And so now I sound normal. Now we can get down to business. Hey guys, welcome to Nitwits. I figured we would do this because today we had a last minute kind of edition of spy stream. And it was a great spy stream. We went inside a 2-hour fat studies presentation, a fat positivity presentation. And yo, it was painful to watch. They said that Cartman was queer. I swear to God. The line of the fat positivity movement is that Eric Cartman on South Park is queer. I have this on video. I'll show you guys the clip later. They talked about capitalism an awful lot. Anyway, this was kind of a last minute addition to the spy stream schedule because I forgot to sign up for it until today. And so I had to cancel the 5 p.m. stream because we were on spy stream, but now we're back. And Tucker Carlson has released this interview with Vladimir Putin, and it got released about half an hour ago. And it's like 2 hours long. And I'm going to be honest, like, I actually don't really care that much about this interview. I know a lot of people do. We're going to watch it. Don't get me wrong. We're going to watch it. But like, I don't care that much about this interview. I have very mixed feelings about the entire situation. First of all, I don't think we should be involved in Russia and Ukraine at all. But my brother-in-law is currently in the Ukrainian army because my husband is from Ukraine and his brother is in the army and has been in the army since the very beginning. And, you know, I like being that my husband is very close to his brother, I would really prefer that, you know, the brother is safe. That would be pretty great. I don't like Russia invading Ukraine. I also don't like the US giving billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to support all this crap. And so when I heard about this interview, I was kind of like, you know, first off, props to Tucker. Props. Because it takes balls to do what he did. Like this is the kind of Tucker that I want to see. I don't want to see the kissing of like when he was kissing Andrew Tate's ass. I was like, yo, like I don't want to see ass kissy Tucker. That's not what I wanted. I want to see, like, I hope that Tucker Carlson, like, really goes for it in this interview. I hope it's not, like, a fucking fluff piece to, like, get the conservative base or any of that. It takes giant balls to do what he's doing, man. So props to him. But I really hope he doesn't let me down like he did in the Andrew Tate interview, because the Andrew Tate interview sucked. And I really hope that he doesn't let me down like he did when he had that guy on that said he gave Barack Obama when he had that guy on that he said he gave Barack Obama a blowjob or something. I was like, that's just trash. Come on, Tucker, that was trash. Or even like him interviewing Cat Turd. I'm sorry, that's trash. It doesn't matter. That's just tribalist bullshit. Like, if he's going to be serious, he should be serious about it. I'm not saying you can't have fun every once in a while. Certainly, like, everyone's allowed to have fun. But I am on... I really wish... Hang on. I really wish that everyone who tells me to be on Rumble constantly would actually check to see if I'm on Rumble before you tell me to get on Rumble. And there's no offense to you, dude. I don't know you. You're trying to help me out. So, like, I don't, like, no shade. But, like, I hear this all the time. Are you on Rumble? Are you on Rumble? Are you on? Just, like, my name is unique. It's not like my name isn't like, you know, Carrie Smith or fucking something like that everyone has that name. Just look up my name on Rumble. You will find it. I promise you. I'm live on Rumble right now. I have 12 people watching, but it'll get to be more. But I think a lot of people are watching the interview right now. But that's interesting that YouTube is pulling the streams. Really? Really? Kevin, you got a boyfriend? Congratulations, Kevin. I knew you had it in you. From that time where you came into my chat when you were freaking out because you had too many edibles, I've been on your team ever since, Kevin. We appreciate you, Kevin. Rottweiler, I honestly don't know what's the big deal. CNN interviewed Bin Laden, CBS interviewed Hussein, and CNN and CBS interviewed Putin in 2005 and 2021. Yeah, I'm kind of like, I kind of feel the same about it. I kind of feel the same. But if YouTube does pull the stream, just know that you guys can go over to Rumble. It's over there as well. So we will just continue it over there if we have to. That's fine. Before we get into it, couple orders of business. Number one, please, as always, do make sure you subscribe to my Substack, which is Carlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. You can find a link in the description below wherever you are watching. Let me just put up my ticker there. Bing. As you can see, you can right now, if you missed the spy stream earlier today, you can find the link to the on-demand versions of the spy stream, the fat positivity training we went into, on the various platforms that they're on. I won't give that away because that is available for supporters only. You can also find things like my Woke 101 series where I break down the woke left in plain English, like really plain English, like as simple as I can possibly explain what they're doing, because God knows no one else is doing it. In the latest article in the Woke 101 series, I talk about what exactly the left means when they say private property, because this seems to be confusing for a lot of people. When I say the number one enemy of the woke left is capitalism, people are confused about what that means. That means private property ownership. When I say private property ownership, people are also confused about what that means. The left wants to abolish all private property. That includes your house, that includes your land, that includes an apartment complex if you're a landlord, or like even just like a townhouse or something that you rent out. That includes your business, that includes your children. It wants to abolish your parental rights. They consider your parental rights to be a form of private property ownership. It also includes your individual liberties. They want to collectivize. They want to collectivize all healthcare. They want to collectivize all education. They want to collectivize all energy, like gas, electricity, heating, that sort of stuff. You can find out more in the article I did on my Substack. Again, Carlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. And if you do want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, I am 100% funded by you. I do original investigative and undercover journalism, just like we did today, going undercover at a fat positivity training just to see what they're talking about. And they're talking about capitalism an awful lot. Isn't that funny? In a fat positivity training, they're talking about capitalism. Oh yeah, they are. Many, many, many times. I've got a crazy clip comparing people who are not fat positive to Nazis, literally. So that's what comes out of that. You can support the work I'm doing by signing up on my Substack for $8 a month or $80 a year. I really do appreciate it. You get a variety of perks. Our next perk coming up is going to be Bitchcraft on Saturday, which is a monthly Zoom where we bitch and we craft. You can bring any craft you want. You can knit, you can crochet, you can quilt, you can sew, you can draw, you can paint, you can clean your gun, you can fold your laundry. You can just come hang out. We do that on Saturday at 3 p.m. before Socialism Saturday. And then, of course, signing up as a supporter also gets you access to the supporter Discord. Right now in the supporter Discord, there is a writers group going on for creatives in the community. So people have actually produced books out of my supporter Discord that are published in the real world today. That's a thing. That's one of the other perks you get. And of course, you do get to support the work I'm doing. And I really, really appreciate you for it. Another thing I want to point out is that if you want to get some cool swag, and this is another way to support my work, head over to unwokeart.com. The link is in the description below, but I will pop it into the chat just in case. There you go. And on unwokeart.com, you can get original designs by me to advertise your role in the counterculture against the woke revolution. Now, I've got a 25% off sale going on a couple of designs right now. The first design you can get for 25% off is the new radical anti-democracy extremist design. I actually like the dark heather gray one. I think I'm going to get the dark heather gray one for me. And the reason I made this design is because last week I got put on a list by a progressive association in New Hampshire of radical anti-democracy extremists. And I was actually put on the list twice. And so I was like, yo, this is something we have to advertise. This is something we have to celebrate. Everyone should really be a radical anti-democracy extremist. I'm not upset that I was put on this list. So I'm going to monetize that by making a t-shirt that put that in my store that supports the radical anti-democracy work I'm doing. Of course, we know that when you speak socialist, when the socialists say democracy, they really mean socialism. So I absolutely do consider myself to be a radical anti-socialist extremist. And you can get that design and advertise it, your proclivities as well, on hoodies, on mugs, on bags, on stickers, on all sorts of other things in the Unwoke Art store right now. Beth said this week's Discord link isn't working for me. I'm very sorry to hear that, Beth. I cannot troubleshoot that right now for you, but if you relax, I can maybe fix that later. So I apologize that it's not working. I just don't know what's going on right now because I checked it before when I saw the chat and it worked fine for me. So I don't know what's happening, but we'll get it fixed at some point, Beth. It's all good. All good. I appreciate the super chat. The other design I have on sale right now is the ever popular, iconic socialists always lie design. Because of course we know anytime a socialist is opening their mouth, some sort of like spin or gaslighting or bullshit is coming out of it. And so you can get the iconic socialists always lie t-shirt or hoodie or bag or tumbler in the Unwoke Art store. And you know, I gotta say, I wear this t-shirt out in the wilds of New Hampshire, and I always get the when you're wearing this shirt outside, what's going to happen is you're going to be walking through a crowded place and people are going to look at you and they're just going to go like this. They're just going to nod at you knowingly. They're not going to make a big deal out of it or anything. You just lock eye contact with someone, they're going to go like this. They're going to do something like that. And it's pretty great when it happens. And it lets you know how many other radical anti-socialist extremists there are in the world, which is a little bit, you know, the world is a crazy place, and there's a lot of black pills right now, and so maybe just getting that knowing nod from another anti-socialist extremist can let you know there is still normality in the world, and that's what you get when you wear that t-shirt out. Those are just two of the designs that are available on unwokeart.com, and all the purchases of that do go to support the work I'm doing, and I really appreciate it. All right, one more thing before we get started. I just want to demonstrate something. Actually, no, two more things. We're going to go to this first. Hang on. We're going to go to this. No, don't play that fucking video, YouTube. No. Okay. YouTube is being difficult. Okay. Thanks. God damn it. Playing the goddamn video again. Oh my God. I already told you to pause like 4 times, YouTube. I don't know why you're not listening to me. I don't want to show that video. I just want to comment on it. Jesus Christ. It's one of those days, isn't it? I swear we're going to get to the Tucker interview. Okay. 2 more things. Number 1, I just revived this clip channel that I started last May and then completely changed the format of my show and kind of just stopped updating to. But people have been asking me to make clips of my longer streams, and I do that. The problem is they get buried on my channel, and my channel is shadow banned on YouTube. It has been for a long time. I know exactly the date it got shadow banned because my metrics were like, and then all of a sudden, the wall came down. And every once in a while, I'm able to break the algorithm on my main channel every once in a while, but really not that. It's like actually really difficult. So I do have this second channel that I created it a while ago, but now I'm actually going to start using it. And so there are clips on the channel. There's going to get more clips uploaded. So if you want me to be breaking down the 4 or 5 hour streams that I do into more manageable chunks, you can head over to there. It's youtube.com/@thebestcult. So sign up for that, subscribe to that, like help me get that channel up and running. I think that would be really, really great. And I do appreciate it. Rottweiler already has Rumble on standby. I will put the Rumble link in the chat in case anyone wants to get Rumble up on standby. There you go. That is the Rumble link to the video that we're watching right now, or the live stream that you're watching right now. Mac B, hey Carlin, I sent you a link for equity and computer science. I saw that, Mac B. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Okay, last thing before we get started, and I just want to point this out, and it's going to reload this fucking video again. I'm not happy about it. Okay. So I want to point this out for all of the James Lindsay stands that I've been hearing from for the past couple days when after literally years of doing nothing but supporting James Lindsay and covering for James Lindsay and telling everyone to go support James Lindsay's work and telling everyone that he's doing a great job. I did this for years, okay? Even when I disagreed with Daddy Lindsay, even when I thought he was behaving like a child, even when I thought the Gnostic stuff was completely off the goddamn reservation, I told the line on James Lindsay for years, for years, for years. Now, this week, well, the past couple weeks, really ever since James Lindsay blocked me on Twitter because he got pissed off that I criticized Moms for Liberty, the minute that James Lindsay blocked me on Twitter, I was like, you know what, James? I'm not covering for your ass anymore. I'm not doing it. Way too many people complain about you to me. I am tired of this, and you've just blocked me on Twitter over something stupid. So you don't get me covering for you anymore, and I have a lot of pent-up thoughts over the past couple years that I haven't said out loud because I've been trying to keep the peace, because I know that if I criticize James Lindsay at all, I'm going to hear from all the fucking James Lindsay stans being like me. So of course, I dared criticize James Lindsay for not knowing as much as I do and my community does about abolish the family and the attacks on parental rights. And James Lindsay whined about it on Twitter. And then I used James Lindsay whining about it on Twitter to make additional points about how little he knows and how little he's covered about abolish the family and attacks on parental rights, which is the truth. And you can see my other videos on that. But I just want to demonstrate something to you about the James Lindsay stance. I want to show you guys who these people are. And I'm going to use Melanie here as an example of this, because Melanie is someone that used to be in my community back when I was symbolic of like the Democrats, a Democrat leaving the Trump rally. Because listen, man, my channel, my platform, my audience got built in 2020 when I was lifted up by conservative media as this mythological being, the Democrat who was a Democrat for 20 years who went to the Trump rally. Like, they lifted me up for a fucking year. They trotted me out all over the place to be like symbolic of Democrats who were leaving the Democratic Party. And I didn't realize I was being used at the time, but I realize it now. And I started to realize it like, not long after all that happened. Anyway, most of my audience was built off of people who found me when I was the mythical being of the Democrat who left the Democratic Party to like after a Trump rally, right? I still get those people in my feed all the time. And there have been a lot of people that have like stayed like supporters of me for like ever since then. So I'm not saying everyone that found me back then are like this, but I get a lot of people in my feed who are like, Carlin, I supported you years ago and you have changed so much and blah, 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 blah. Now, what they mean when they say I've changed is that I don't toe the conservative line anymore. The entire year of 2020, I was towing the conservative line because I was given talking points by people, and it was made very clear to me that I better follow those talking points. And at that time, I thought that the higher level ideal was that Donald Trump needed to get elected. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to play this game until the election, even if I don't agree with it. I'm going to like just stifle some of my more libertarian tendencies. It's just not the time for it. We have a higher level priority, whatever. After Joe Biden got into office, I started saying what I actually thought in the world. And then people were like, oh, you've changed so much. Well, no, I never changed. I never changed. My ideas haven't actually changed all that much. What has changed is there was a time I was towing the conservative line, and there was a time that I stopped towing the conservative line. And the people who only followed me because I was this mythical being of being a Democrat that went to a Trump rally got really pissed off when I took their toys away, essentially. And so I bring that up because the comment that we're going to look at that is typical of the James Lindsay stands that I've had in my feed for the past couple days, this is what you can expect. So we've got Melanie here. I vaguely remember Melanie. Melanie became a supporter in my locals community back in 2020. And then Melanie got pissed off at me because I stopped towing the conservative line. And now Melanie's coming around to give me a good piece of her mind about how dare I say anything about James Lindsay. So let's see what Melanie had to say. After I emphatically proved that my audience knows more about Abolish the Family than James Lindsay himself has ever effing covered? Here's what Melanie had to say. Wait, so you think your depth of knowledge of leftist ideology can go toe-to-toe with James Lindsay? Yes, Melanie. Yes. Yes, I do. That he wouldn't eat you for lunch on subjects such as Marcuse and Hegel. I don't read Marcuse and Hegel on my channel. What I do is I watch real woke trainings and real socialist trainings in the real fucking world that are happening right now. I look at what the true believer activists are teaching to everyone else in colleges and universities and K through 12 schools, in conferences and workshops and coffee shop trainings and all this, and in bookstores and all this stuff. And I do qualitative and linguistic analysis. So the James Lindsay stands don't even bother to research exactly what my methodology is before they tell me that I don't know as much as I think I do. She goes, "Stop, you couldn't possibly. See, I used to be one of your followers. I even supported you on locals for a short time. But your ego and constant need to be beefing with someone and to be a victim turned me off all the way. Yeah, I pop in from time to time just to see what you got cooking. But this? How dare you? Girl. Josh Slocum of the Disaffected Podcast has your type nailed to the floor, and this drive-by is over." This is the typical, reaction of a James Lindsay stan. And this is how I know. This is how I know that my audience knows way more than these people every day of the week. Every day of the week. Because they don't bother to do the bare minimum of research. Yeah, she really thinks, she's like, "You don't read Marcuse and Hegel." No, bitch, I don't. What I do is I listen to Sophie Lewis and Emmy O'Brien and Chidi Bhattacharya and all of these socialist activists that are actually like Jules Gill Peterson. I listen to their books, I listen to their trainings, I listen to what they're doing in the real world, I listen to their presentations. I actually listen to the real people who are pushing these real ideologies in the real world, not fucking philosophers from 100 years ago. But she thinks she really told me. And this is what I'm saying. When you are dealing with morons on the internet that don't bother to do the basic research before they start running their mouths, if this is the best that the James Lindsay stands have to offer, I feel very comfortable that me and my audience know more than them about what's going on in the world every single day of the week. Every single day. Yeah, Beth, you mean you actually watch the real ones? Yeah, they still haven't figured this out. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Melanie, for dropping by and showing me emphatically you don't actually know what I'm doing and you haven't paid attention. I do really appreciate it. I'll pop it in the chat in a minute, Bill. And I just want to say, if I keep hearing from the James Lindsay stands that I'm not allowed to criticize James Lindsay, I'm only going to start criticizing James Lindsay more. I will do entire fucking streams criticizing James Lindsay until you guys get the F out of my business. If you don't want to watch socialists in the real world, that's fine. I don't really care. You don't have to do anything. If you want to base your entire analysis on the world on philosophy papers from 50 or 100 years ago, that's your business, man. I think it's retarded. I have this crazy idea that if we want to know what's going on right now in the real world, we have to look at things that are going on right now in the real world. But you're welcome to use whatever retarded strategies you want to try to figure out what the left is doing. But if you keep whining about it in my feed, I'm just going to criticize your guy more. And trust me, you guys really don't want me to start watching James Lindsay. I haven't listened to James Lindsay in almost 3 years. I promise you that if I start watching James Lindsay on my channel and debunking the things that James Lindsay says on my channel, you guys are really going to get fucking pissed off then. And when I debunk him, I'm going to not be debunking him with my, I trust me, bro, pinky swear, I'm not just going to be giving my opinions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to compare and contrast what he's saying with what real socialist activists are saying in the real world right now. And we're going to see what people believe. Do they listen to the philosophy paper from 100 years ago, or do they look at what real activists are doing in the real world right now? I feel comfortable about my chances on that one, guys. So if you don't want to listen to my content and actually research what you're talking about, that's fine. But if you keep causing problems for me and you keep giving me a headache over your whining and complaining because you think I'm not allowed to criticize James Lindsay, that's going to backfire emphatically on you. Go ahead and try me. Go ahead and try me. I'm a fucking Aries sun with a Leo moon and Pluto in the first fucking house, and I know that most people don't know what that means, but what it does mean is whiny bitches on the internet are not going to win. That's all I have to say about that. Let me just get this link for Bill, because Bill said he could not find the link to my new clip channel in the YouTubes. So I'll pop that in there. It is youtube.com/@thebestcult. And make sure you subscribe to it, guys, because that's going to be my clip channel. And hopefully that will help me break out of this fucking shadow ban that I've been in for a while now. And we'll see how that goes. All right. With that out of the way, let's watch us some Tucka, shall we? Let's watch us some Tucka. Let's see what happened. Again, I don't actually really have an opinion on this, but I feel like it does feel like the responsible thing to do to watch this. So let's just watch it and see what happens. Thank you, Tucker, for delivering us this content. We appreciate you.
The following is an interview with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, shot February 6, 2024 at about 7 p.m. in the building behind us, which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview, as you will see if you watch it, is primarily about the war in progress, the war in Ukraine, how it started, what's happening, and most pressingly, how it might end. One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview, we asked the most obvious question, which is, why did you do this? Did you feel a threat, an imminent physical threat? And that's your justification. And the answer we got shocked us. Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia going back to the 8th century. And honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times. And he responded he was annoyed by the interruption. But we concluded in the end, for what it's worth, that it was not a filibustering technique. There was no time limit on the interview. We ended it after more than 2 hours. Instead, what you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not. Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of Western Ukraine. So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks. And with that, here it is. Mr. President, thank you. On February 22nd, 2022, you addressed your country in a nationwide address when the conflict in Ukraine started. And you said that you were acting because you had come to the conclusion that the United States, through NATO, might initiate a, quote, surprise attack on our country. And to American ears, that sounds paranoid. Tell us why you believe the United States might strike Russia out of the blue. How did you conclude that?
It's not that America, the United States, was going to launch a surprise strike on Russia. I didn't say that. Are we having a talk show or a serious conversation?
Here's the quote. Thank you. It's a formidable serious talk.
Because your basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
Let's look where our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from? The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, and it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862. when the townspeople of Novgorod invited a Varangian prince, Rurik, from Scandinavia to reign. In 1862, Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood. And in Novgorod, there is a memorial dedicated to the 1000th anniversary of the country. In 882, Rurik's successor, Prince Oleg, who was actually playing the role of regent at Rurik's young son,
Just water.
because Rurik had died by that time, came to Kiev. He ousted two brothers who apparently had once been members of Rurik's squad. So Russia began to develop with two centers of power, Kiev and Novgorod. The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988. This was the baptism of Russia, when Prince Vladimir, the great-grandson of Rurik, baptized Russia and adopted Orthodoxy, or Eastern Christianity. From this time, the centralized Russian state began to strengthen. Why? Because of the single territory, integrated economic ties, one and the same language, and, after the baptism of Russia, the same faith and rule of the prince. The centralized Russian state began to take shape. Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to a throne.
I love Tucker's face. Tucker's so confused by
But
all of
after
this.
he passed away, it became complicated for various reasons. The throne was passed not directly from father to eldest son, but from the prince who had passed away to his brother, then to his sons in different lines. All this led to the fragmentation and the end of Rus as a single state. There was nothing special about it. The same was happening then in Europe. But the fragmented Russian state became an easy prey to the empire created earlier by Genghis Khan. His
Tucker's like, what
successors,
the
namely
fuck?
Batu Khan, came to Rus, plundered and ruined nearly all the cities. The southern part, including Kiev, by the way, and some other cities, simply lost independence, while northern cities preserved some of their sovereignty. They had to pay tribute to the horde, but they managed to preserve some part of their sovereignty. And then a
Bubbly.
unified Russian state began to take shape
Lemon
with its
sorbet.
center in Moscow. The southern part of Russian lands, including Kiev, began to gradually gravitate towards another magnet, the center that was emerging in Europe. This was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania.
Oh my god.
It was even called the
Seriously.
Lithuanian-Russian Duchy,
I'm already bored by
because
this,
Russians
Vladimir.
were
Come
a
on.
significant part of this population.
Speed
They
it up.
spoke the old Russian language and were Orthodox. But then there was a unification, the union of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland. A few years later, another union was signed, but this time already in the religious sphere. Some of the Orthodox priests became subordinate to the Pope. Thus, these lands became part of the Polish-Lithuanian state.
If I interviewed Putin, what would I ask him? I don't know. I'm gonna think about that one, John. I'm gonna think about that one. Oh god, Naptown's here. Last time you guys showed up, I ended up with Hormaxer, like, shoving his dick into the camera at me. I'm not sure I want you guys here. Okay, we're not gonna talk about Hormaxer right now. Back to Putin.
During decades, the Poles were engaged in Polonization of this part of the population. They introduced their language there, tried to entrench the idea that this population was not exactly Russians, that because they lived on the fringe, they were Ukrainians. Originally, the word Ukrainian meant that a person was living on the outskirts of the state, along the fringes, or was engaged in a border patrol
Okay,
service.
so Putin feels like he has a
It
right to
didn't mean
Ukraine.
any
The
particular
Ukrainians
ethnic
disagree.
group. So the Poles were trying to, in every possible way, to colonize this part of the Russian lands, and actually treated it rather harshly, not to say cruelly. All that led to the fact that this part of the Russian lands began to struggle for their rights. They wrote letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be observed and people be commissioned here, including to Kiev.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period? I'm losing track of where in history we are. The Polish oppression of Ukraine.
It was in the 13th century.
That's not true. I'm sorry. That is just not true.
Now
And
I
keep
will
in
tell
mind,
you
my
what happened
family lives
later.
there. That's not true.
And give the dates so that there is no confusion. And in 1654, even a bit earlier, the people who were in control of the authority over that part of the Russian lands addressed Warsaw, I repeat, demanding that they send them to rulers of Russian origin and Orthodox faith. When Warsaw did not answer them, and in fact rejected their demands, they...
I am sorry, Joa, but first of all, I'm not going to have any more argument with you about this in my stream. This is not true. My family is there. You are not. It is just not true.
Turned to Moscow so that Moscow took them away. So that you don't think that I'm inventing things. I'll give you these documents.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're inventing it. I'm not sure why it's relevant to what happened 2 years ago.
But still, these are documents from the archives, copies. Here are the letters from Bogdan Khmelnytsky, the man who then controlled the power in this part of the Russian lands that is now called Ukraine. He wrote to Warsaw demanding that their rights be upheld, and after being refused, he began to write letters to Moscow, asking to take them under the strong hand of the Moscow Tsar. There are copies of these documents. I will leave them for your good memory. There is a translation into
For
Russian.
your good memory,
you can
I like
translate
that.
it into English later.
Russia
would not agree to admit them straight away.
I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that line. I'm gonna use that. All right, Joa, goodbye. I told you I wasn't gonna fucking argue with you. I'm going to use that line here. I'm going to leave this here for good memory. Anytime I'm providing receipts or anything like that, I'm going to leave these receipts here for your good memory. I'm going to leave you these receipts that I do actually know more about this than James Lindsay does for your good memory.
Assuming that the war with Poland would start. Nevertheless, in 1654, the Pan-Russian Assembly of top clergy and landowners, headed by the Tsar, which was the representative body of the power of the old Russian state, decided to include a part of the old Russian lands into Moscow Kingdom.
As a reminder, guys, because people keep coming into the chat and saying this, I am on both YouTube and Rumble right now. And so if anything happens to the stream on YouTube, then just go to Rumble and look up my name. It's Carlin Burisenko. You can find the channel there. And we're watching exactly the same thing on both platforms. Please make sure you are subscribed on both platforms just in case something happens. Now would be, I will even provide you the link out to the Rumble stream, just in case you need to head over there. The show ends for no YouTube, shenanigans.
The war with Poland began. It lasted 13 years, and then in 1654, a truce was concluded. And 32 years later, I think, a peace treaty with Poland, which they called Eternal Peace, was signed. And these lands, the whole left bank of Dnieper, including Kiev, went to Russia. And the whole right bank of Dnieper remained in Poland. Under the rule of Catherine the Great, Russia reclaimed all of its historical lands, including in the south and west. This all lasted until the revolution. Before World War I, Austrian General Staff relied on the ideas of Ukrainianization and started actively promoting the ideas of Ukraine and the Ukrainianization. Their motive was obvious. Just before World War I, they wanted to weaken the potential enemy and secure themselves favorable conditions in the border area. So the idea which had emerged in Poland that people residing in that territory were allegedly not really Russians, but rather belonged to a special ethnic group, Ukrainians, started being propagated by the Austrian General Staff. As far back as the 19th century, theorists calling for Ukrainian independence appeared. All those, however, claimed that Ukraine should have a very good relationship with Russia. They insisted on that. After the 1917 revolution, the Bolsheviks sought to restore the statehood, and the civil war began, including the hostilities with Poland.
I'm like falling asleep right now. Can we get to the point, please?
In 1921, peace with Poland was proclaimed, and under that,
Honestly, I would rather right now there not even just like be an interpreter, and I could just listen to Vladimir Putin speak Russian, because like I married a Russian speaking Ukrainian. I find like Eastern European men speaking Russian to be incredibly sexy. In fact, when I met my husband, it was because I was trying to learn Russian. And no, because you can't. And when I met my husband, it was because I was trying to learn Russian. And he showed up at my house as my mover and started speaking to me with a Russian accent. And I was like, oh. And my husband was very, very sexy when I met him. Very sexy. It's true. Anyway, my point is that I don't actually care about any of this story at all. I'm sure it's all historically accurate. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's very important. But I would just like the interpreter to shut up. And I would be happier if I was literally just listening to Vladimir Putin speak Russian. I'd be like, that would be nice. That I would prefer that.
That treaty, the right bank of Dnieper River once again was given back to Poland. In 1939, after Poland cooperated with Hitler, it did collaborate with Hitler, you know? Hitler offered Poland peace and a treaty of friendship, an alliance demanding in return that Poland give back to Germany the so-called Danzig corridor, which connected the bulk of Germany with East Prussia and Königsberg. After World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Gdansk emerged. Hitler asked them to give it amicably, but they refused.
Of course.
Still, they collaborated with Hitler and engaged together in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia.
But may I ask you, you're making the case that Ukraine, certainly parts of Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine, is in effect Russia has been for hundreds of years. Why wouldn't you just take it when you became president 24 years ago? You have nuclear weapons, they don't. If it's actually your land, why did you wait so long?
I'll tell you. I'm coming to that. This briefing is coming to an end. It might be boring, but it explains many things.
Just don't know how it's relevant.
Good. Good. I'm so gratified that you appreciate that. Thank you. So, before World War II, Poland collaborated with Hitler, and although it did not yield to Hitler's demands, It still participated in the partitioning of Czechoslovakia together with Hitler, as the Poles had not given the Danzig corridor to Germany and went too far, pushing Hitler to start World War II by attacking them. Why was it Poland against whom the war started on 1st September 1939? Poland turned out to be uncompromising, and Hitler had nothing to do but start implementing his plans with Poland. By the way, the USSR, I have read some archive documents, behaved very honestly. It asked Poland's permission to transit
How
its
is it
troops through the
possible that
Polish
Putin is
territory
this
to help
boring?
Czechoslovakia.
Everyone was complaining about this.
But the then Polish foreign minister...
Did all the people who have been complaining about this interview forever realize that Putin was going to turn out to be like a boring history professor? I'm sure this is relevant. I'm sure it is, but I'm fading here.
Said that if the Soviet planes flew over Poland, they would be downed over the territory of Poland. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that the war began, and Poland fell prey to the policies
Putin is a Libra. Yeah, he is.
It had pursued against Czechoslovakia, as under the well-known Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Part of the territory, including Western Ukraine, was to be given to Russia. Thus, Russia, which was then named the USSR, regained its historical lands. After the victory in the Great Patriotic War, as we call World War II...
So essentially, this is exactly what my husband said to me, literally the night this stuff all kicked off in Ukraine. He said, Carlin, Putin's trying to reunify Mother Russia. And I was like, well, that makes sense to me. So Putin is basically arguing that he's trying, this could have all been cleared up in a sentence. Putin is trying to reunify Mother Russia. Period. The end. That's my interpretation of this. Am I wrong? Putin thinks there's some deep historical claim to these lands, and he wants to reunify Mother Russia.
All those territories were ultimately enshrined as belonging to Russia,
exactly.
To the USSR.
Victor was right. Victor was right.
As for Poland, it received, apparently in compensation, the lands which had originally been German. The eastern parts of Germany, these are now western lands of Poland. Of course, Poland regained access to the Baltic Sea and Danzig, which was once again given its Polish name. So this was how this situation developed. In 1922, when the USSR was being established, the Bolsheviks started building the USSR and established the Soviet Ukraine, which had never existed before.
Right.
Stalin insisted that those republics be included in the USSR as autonomous entities. For some inexplicable reason, Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, insisted that they be entitled to withdraw from the USSR. And again, for some unknown reasons, he transferred to that newly established Soviet Republic of Ukraine some of the lands together with people living there, even though those lands had never been called Ukraine, and yet they were made part of that Soviet Republic of Ukraine. Those lands included the Black Sea region, which was received under Catherine the Great, and which had no historical connection with Ukraine whatsoever. Even if we go as far back as 1654, when these lands returned to Russian Empire, that territory was the size of 3 to 4 regions of modern Ukraine, with no Black Sea region. That was completely out of the question.
In 1654.
Exactly.
You obviously have encyclopedic knowledge of this region, but why didn't you make this case for the first 22 years as president that Ukraine wasn't a real country?
The Soviet Union was given a great deal of territory that had never belonged to it, including the Black Sea.
You know what? This is correct. We once watched a half-hour land blessing on this channel that included a whole half-hour PowerPoint presentation about the native peoples of the land, and I thought that was the longest land blessing that we were ever going to listen to. No. Putin has successfully executed the longest and most viewed land blessing in the history of the fucking world. We are all watching a massive goddamn land blessing right now. True, it is.
The region. At some point, when Russia received them as an outcome of the Russo-Turkish Wars, they were called New Russia or Novorossiya. But that does not matter. What matters is that Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, established Ukraine that way. For decades, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic developed as part of the USSR.
Putin is trolling
And for unknown
everyone.
reasons again, the
True.
Bolsheviks were engaged in Ukrainianization.
Fucking socialist.
It was not
Swear to
merely
God.
because the Soviet leadership was composed to a great extent of those originating from Ukraine. Rather, it was explained by the general policy of indigenization.
Like, literally, Putin is demanding that the land be given back. This is no different than any other like socialist land blessing where they're like the native peoples had this land stolen and colonized and
pursued by the Soviet Union. Same things were done in other Soviet republics. This involved promoting national languages and national cultures, which is not bad in principle. That is how the Soviet Ukraine was created. After the World War II, Ukraine received, in addition to the lands that had belonged to Poland before the war, part of the lands that had previously belonged to Hungary and Romania. So Romania and Hungary had some of their lands taken away and given to the Soviet Ukraine, and they still remain part of Ukraine. So in this sense, we have every reason to affirm that Ukraine is an artificial state that was shaped at Stalin's will.
Do you believe Hungary has a right to take its land back from Ukraine and that other nations have a right to go back to their 1654 borders?
It's a good question, Tucker.
I'm not sure whether they should go back to the 1654 borders. But given Stalin's time, so-called Stalin's regime, which as many claim saw numerous violations of human rights and violations of the rights of other states, one may say that they could claim back those lands of theirs while having no right to do that. It is at least understandable.
Have you told Viktor Orban that he can have part of Ukraine?
Never. I have never told him, not a single time. We have not even had any conversation on that, but I actually know for sure that Hungarians who live there wanted to get back to their historical land. Moreover, I would like to share a very interesting story with you. I digress, it's a personal one. Somewhere in the early 80s, I went on a road trip in a car from then Leningrad across the Soviet Union through Kiev, made a stop in Kiev, and then went to Western Ukraine. I went to the town of Beregovoye, and all the names of towns and villages there were in Russian and in a language I did not understand, in Hungarian, in Russian and in Hungarian. Not in Ukrainian, in Russian, and in Hungarian. I was driving through some kind of village, and there were men sitting next to the houses, and they were wearing black three-piece suits and black cylinder hats. I asked, are they some kind of entertainers? I was told, no, they were not entertainers, they're Hungarians. I said, what are they doing here? What do you mean? This is their land, they live here. This was during the Soviet time in the 1980s. They preserved the Hungarian language, Hungarian names, and all their national costumes. They are Hungarians and they feel themselves to be Hungarians. And of course, when now there is an infringement.
Well, that is, and there's a lot of that, though. I think many nations, they're upset about Transylvania as well, as you obviously know. But many
Okay, as a reminder, guys, I keep getting messages saying YouTube is pulling other streams. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. For the record, YouTube, I'm on Ukraine's side. I'm married to a Ukrainian, so if that makes any difference in I'm not supporting Russia. I actually don't care about this. I don't think that America should be involved at all. But I just want to make it very clear to the YouTube overlords that I'm not saying anything in support of Putin. I don't Putin is putting us all to fucking sleep right now. Okay, he's not even saying anything interesting. But just in case the stream gets pulled on YouTube, I am also streaming on Rumble. And so I just want to remind everyone that you can also watch this on Rumble. And please, while everyone is here, make sure you are subscribed on both YouTube and on Rumble. I appreciate it. And why not mount the like button for me, guys? There, per usual, is a shocking disparity between the number of people who are watching right now and the number of people who have mounted that like button for me. So let's get those numbers up. Can we please? Appreciate it.
nations feel frustrated by the redrawn borders of the wars of the 20th century and wars going back 1,000 years, the ones that you mentioned. But the fact is that you didn't make this case in public until 2 years ago, February. And in the case that you made, which I read today, you explain at great length that you felt a physical threat from the West in NATO, including potentially a nuclear threat. And that's what got you to move. Is that a fair characterization of what you said?
Я понимаю, что мои длинные диалоги,
I almost
I
understood
understand that my long
almost
speeches
understood that.
probably fall outside of the genre of the interview. That is why I asked you at the beginning, are we going to have a serious talk or a show? You said a serious talk. So bear with me, please. We're coming to the point where the Soviet Ukraine was established. Then
Putin's Libra is showing right now, because Libras can be very charming and very diplomatic and this is Putin's Libra showing. He's like, Tucker, aren't we having a serious conversation, Tucker? Don't you want to have a serious... Putin is basically seducing Tucker right now.
in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. And everything that Russia had generously bestowed on Ukraine was dragged away by the latter.
How much Russian can I speak and understand? Not really much right now. There was a time when I was really trying hard to learn it, and I tried to make Victor teach me it, and Victor always got very self-conscious about teaching me Russian because he's like, Carlin, I don't say my R's correctly. And I was like, I don't really think that matters, Victor. It's going to be fine. But I did learn the Russian alphabet at some point, and that helped out a lot. And I can pick up words here and there, but what I would really like is to be able to speak Russian fluently. So me and Victor can speak Russian to each other, when we're out in public, and people, we can say whatever, and people that's what I would really like. But he doesn't want to teach me because he feels like it's work or something. I'm probably a pain in the ass to teach Russian, though, if I'm honest about it. But I would like to learn. I think Russian is the sexiest language. So I would like to learn it.
I'm coming to a very important point of today's agenda.
Thank you.
After all, the collapse of the Soviet Union was effectively initiated by the Russian leadership. I do not understand what the Russian leadership was guided by at the time, but I suspect there were several reasons to think everything would be fine. First, I think that then Russian leadership believed that the fundamentals of the relationship between Russia and Ukraine were, in fact, a common language. More than 90% of the population there spoke Russian. Family ties. Every third person there had some kind of family or friendship ties. Common culture, common history. Finally, common faith, coexistence with a single state for centuries, and deeply interconnected economies. All of these were so fundamental. All these elements together make our good relationships inevitable. The second point is a very important one. I want you, as an American citizen, and your viewers to hear about this as well. The former Russian leadership assumed that the Soviet Union had ceased to exist, and therefore there were no longer any ideological dividing lines. Russia even agreed voluntarily and proactively to the collapse of the Soviet Union and believed that this would be understood by the so-called civilized West as an invitation for cooperation and association. That is what Russia was expecting, both from the United States and the so-called collective West as a whole. There were smart people, including in Germany, Egon Bahr, a major politician of the Social Democratic Party, who insisted in his personal conversations with the Soviet leadership on the brink of the collapse of the Soviet Union that a new security system should be established in Europe.
I have no idea what he's talking about right now. I don't even
Help
care.
should be given to unify Germany, but a new system should be also established.
This is like when we're watching socialism and they overwhelm us with word salad that doesn't actually like. I'm sure what he says makes sense. Like again, I'm sure this is historically accurate. Whatever. Putin does his homework. He's former KGB. He knows how to play this situation. I got it. But like, I really feel like he's trying to bore us all to death to get us to stop paying attention. And of course, those are the times when you need to pay attention, because when someone's trying to bore you to death to get you to stop paying attention, at some point they're going to say something important, and they're hoping that you just gloss right over it because they've already spent like an hour and a half boring you to death. So on one hand, I'm annoyed. On the other, I know that we need to stick this out and listen to what this guy's going to say.
To include the United States, Canada, Russia, and other Central European countries.
Yeah, exactly, Ryan. We've trained for this.
But NATO needs not to expand. That's what he said.
NATO.
If NATO expands, everything would be just the same as during the Cold War, only closer to Russia's borders. That's all. He was a wise old man, but no one listened to him. In fact, he got angry once. If, he said, you don't listen to me, I'm never setting my foot in Moscow once again. Everything happened just as he had said.
Well, of course, it did come true, and you've mentioned this many times. I think it's a fair point, and many in America thought that relations between Russia and the United States would be fine with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War.
It's a great idea.
The opposite happened, but you've never explained why you think that happened, except to say that the West fears a strong Russia, but we have a strong China the West does not seem very afraid of. What about Russia, do you think, convinced policymakers they had to take it down?
The West is afraid of strong China more than it fears a strong Russia, because Russia has 150 million people and China has 1.5 billion population, and its economy is growing by leaps and bounds, or 5% a year. It used to be even more. But that's enough for China. As Bismarck once put it, potentials are the most important. China's potential is enormous. It is the biggest economy in the world today in terms of purchasing power parity and the size of the economy. It has already overtaken the United States quite a long time ago, and it is growing at a rapid clip. Let's not talk about who is afraid of whom. Let's not reason in such terms. And let's get into the fact that after 1991, when Russia expected that it would be welcomed into the brotherly family of civilized nations, nothing like this happened. You tricked us. I don't mean you personally when I say you. Of course, I'm talking about the United States. The promise was that NATO would not expand eastward, but it happened 5 times. There were 5 waves of expansion. We tolerated all that. We were trying to persuade them. We were saying, please don't. We are as bourgeois now as you are. We are market economy and there is no communist party power. Let's negotiate. Moreover, I have also said this publicly before. There was a moment when a certain rift started growing between us. Before that, Yeltsin came to the United States. Remember, he spoke in Congress and said the good words. God bless America. Everything he said were signals. Let us in. Remember the developments in Yugoslavia before the Yeltsin was lavished with praise? As soon as the developments in Yugoslavia started, he raised his voice in support of Serbs, and we couldn't but raise our voices for Serbs in their defense. I understand that there were complex processes underway there, I do, but Russia could not help raising its voice in support of Serbs, because Serbs are also a special and close to us nation, with Orthodox culture and so on. It's a nation that has suffered so much for generations. Well, regardless, what is important is that Yeltsin expressed his support. What did the United States do? In violation of international
Wait.
law?
Really? What's going on? Did something happen with documents relating to Biden having dementia get released today? I saw something about that, but I was busy all day. People are not I heard people saying though that Biden is gonna resign because of the dementia and they're going to install Kamala and then she gets to run as the incumbent because obviously Biden is not going to be on the ticket. Am I making this up? What is Biden addressing the nation on? Does anyone know? Can anyone get more information?
And the UN Charter, it started bombing.
We can cut out. Do you guys want to just briefly when Biden starts addressing the nation? Do you want to leave this and go to see what Biden is talking about? One in the chat if we should briefly cut out in 10 minutes to go see what Biden is addressing the nation on. Two, if we should watch because this is on demand. This is not live. So should we do that? Yeah, it's probably the responsible thing to do, if I'm honest about it. Maybe it'll also prevent this stream from getting pulled off of YouTube. That'd be pretty great. I would appreciate that. Oh, hey, Waffins. Even Waffins is here. I see you, bro. I see you over on Twitter. Thank you, Waffins. All right, so I will get set up and we will make sure we cut out in 8 minutes or whatever to go see what Biden has to say. And we'll continue to watch Vladimir Putin's land blessing until then, okay?
Belgrade. It was the United States that let the genie out of the bottle. Moreover, when Russia protested and expressed its resentment, what was said? The UN Charter and international law have become obsolete. Now everyone invokes international law, but at that time they started saying that everything was outdated. Everything had to be changed. Indeed, some things need to be changed, as the balance of power has changed. It's true, but not in this manner. Yeltsin was immediately dragged through the mud, accused of alcoholism, of understanding nothing, of knowing nothing. He understood everything, I assure you. Well, I became president in 2000. I thought, okay, the Yugoslav issue is over, but we should try to restore relations. Let's reopen the door that Russia had tried to go through. And moreover, I said it publicly, I can reiterate. At a meeting here in the Kremlin with the outgoing President Bill Clinton, right here in the next room, I said to him, I asked him, Bill, do you think if Russia asked to join NATO, do you think it would happen? Suddenly he said, it's interesting. I think so. But in the evening, when we met for dinner, he said, I've talked to my team. No, it's not possible now. You can ask him. I think he will watch our interview. He'll confirm it. I wouldn't have said anything like that if it hadn't happened. Okay.
Were you sincere?
It's impossible now.
Would you have joined NATO?
Look, I asked the question, is it possible or not? And the answer I got was no. If I was insincere in my desire to find out what the leadership position was...
But if he had said yes, would you have joined NATO?
If he had said yes, the process of rapprochement would have commenced, and eventually it might have happened if we had seen some sincere wish on the other side of our partners. But it didn't happen. Well, no means no. Okay, fine.
Why do you think that is? Just to get to motive. I know you're clearly bitter about it. I understand.
I wouldn't
but
say he's
why
bitter,
do you think the West rebuffed you then? Why the hostility? Why did the end of the Cold War not fix the relationship? What motivates this from your point of view?
You said I was bitter about the answer. No, it's not bitterness. It's just a statement of fact. We're not bride and groom, bitterness, resentment. It's not about those kind of matters in such circumstances. We just realized we weren't welcome there, that's all. Okay, fine. But let's build relations in another manner. Let's look for common ground elsewhere. Why we received such a negative response, you should ask your leaders. I can only guess why. Too big a country with its own opinion and so on. And the United States, I've seen how issues are being resolved in NATO. I will give you another example now concerning Ukraine. The US leadership exerts pressure, and all NATO members obediently vote, even if they do not like something. Now, I'll tell you what happened in this regard with Ukraine in 2008, although it's being discussed. I'm not going to open a secret to you, say anything new. Nevertheless, after that, we tried to build relations in different ways. For example, the events.
Okay, just getting teed up for the Biden thing. Let's just bounce over there. Kino just sent me something on Twitter. Well, maybe we can watch a couple. Well, it's like 3 minutes. Everyone can survive for 3 minutes on holding to get Biden's like fucking thing or whatever. Look, I made it through the first half of the Putin stream without getting yanked off of YouTube. That's pretty great. Can we all celebrate that? Mount the like button if you're happy I didn't get yanked off YouTube for the first half of the Putin stream. We're going to go back to Vladimir Putin's land blessing after Joe Biden addresses the nation. Don't worry about it. But yeah, that was a lot. This is great. This is a break. Everyone needs this break. Okay. Everyone, no one is that interested in Soviet history. I don't think. So we are breaking to watch Joe Biden's address to the nation, which allegedly will begin shortly if they can go wake Joe Biden up. Kino has just tagged me in something on Twitter, a tweet from Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey says, special counsel just reported that Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials and engaged in practices that present serious risks to national security. Even more disturbing, Biden would lack a mental state of willfulness necessary to prosecute. So basically, it seems as though something happened in which Biden's mental acuity was called into question by some guy, and now Biden's addressing the nation. And so I don't know what this address is about. So, well, it's 7:45. Didn't they say 7:45? Are you just saying he's going to be late? Yeah, it's 7:45 right now. Almost. It's 7:43. So they're saying that Biden is becoming a security risk and he has to go. I mean, listen, man, they've been looking for a reason to get Biden out and Kamala in anyway, even though no one wants Kamala Harris to run for president because no one likes her because she's a bitch. So maybe it could be about that. I mean, are we officially going to war? Weren't we striking targets in the Middle East last week or something like that? I've so turned off to global politics. I just do socialism now. I don't even know what's going on. You guys got to tell me. Jane, do you think that this is a distraction to take the spotlight off of Tucker? Probably. That would be my inclination. If Biden doesn't say anything of value in this national address to the nation at the last minute, then I think that the only conclusion we can come to is that this was to distract from Tucker Carlson releasing the interview with Vladimir Putin. Even though Vladimir Putin isn't even saying anything. This is everyone freaking out over nothing. Vladimir Putin has said nothing yet in this meeting or this fucking interview that changes anything. We've had a 45-minute land blessing, and that's it. Maybe, I don't know who, I don't know if anyone else has anyone else actually watched the interview? Does he actually start to say something of substance? Yeah, so are we officially going to war or what? Is that what this is about? He didn't say anything the whole time? This is why, guys, everyone needs to calm down. and just listen to what's being said, because everyone's been freaking out, and it turns out he didn't even say anything. It's setting the state for justification of what, Waffens? What are you replying to? For war or for whatever? What is he trying to justify? Well, why are streams getting pulled down if Tucker Carlson's YouTube channel has the interview? I'm watching it on his website. The world has gone mad. Everyone sucks. And Joe Biden is late. Putin is building up to his answer. I say we ignore Sleepy. Well, Waffens, you pressed 1 earlier, so you need to be responsible for your vote. Everyone else pressed 1. We're gonna see what's going on. The Putin thing is already, like, it's on demand. We can watch it after. We aren't missing anything. Do we want to do an over-under on how late Joe Biden is going to be for this address to the nation, which is so deeply important that he's already late? Joe Biden doesn't respect our time, because time is white supremacy. And therefore, Joe Biden is totally against white supremacy. So Joe Biden is not respecting our time, because if he did respect our time, he would be a white supremacist. Look, 4,500 people watching this thing on YouTube, and it doesn't even have 100 thumbs up. Can you guys give me more thumbs up so I can have way more thumbs up than Biden? I know I don't have like 4,500 people watching or anything, but I think we can do better than that. Ryan says it's going to get started around 8. They probably had to shoot him up with something, like adrenaline or something. What is that? What like, that's like when someone like ODs, that's like in Pulp Fiction when Uma Thurman OD'd, that was like a shot of adrenaline to the heart, right? They're probably shooting Biden up with adrenaline right now to get him to get through this speech. I have more likes on this video than the White House does. That's pretty great. But, you know, I mean, to be fair, pretty much anyone on YouTube, I think, could get more likes on a video than the White House could, which says a lot. And yet Biden's probably going to win in November, because that's how incompetent the right is. And the world sucks, and we're all going to die, and it's all going to descend into a socialist utopia. And there's nothing we can do to stop it, because everyone is reeing on Twitter about things that don't matter, and no one actually wants to talk about things that do matter. I'm sorry, do you mind if I go black pill tonight while we're waiting for Joe Biden to get his ass out of bed into the podium or wherever he's speaking from? Yes. Yes, I think I am. Yep. But is it a black pill, though? Is it? I don't know. There's a certain amount of freedom that comes when you know there is no hope. The world sucks. Ain't no changing it. You can just do whatever you want at that point. You can act with reckless abandon. Frees you up for a whole new level of, like, shenanigans and tomfoolery. I mean, we got to pass the time somehow. All right, guys, if you just joined, we are cutting out from the Putin speech to watch whatever Biden's address to the nation is. No, you know why? You know why, Stony? You know why? Because as soon as I do that, the speech is going to start. As soon as I go back, I'm not like, I've been being put to sleep by Vladimir Putin for like 45 minutes already. Like, as soon as I minimize this and go back to the other one, the speech is going to start. That's called tempting fate. While we're waiting, guys, please make sure you are subscribed to my new-ish clip channel that I've never really used before. If you want me to break down my longer streams into more manageable clips that you can consume quickly, please go and subscribe over there. I've tried putting clips on my main channel, and apparently people can't find them, and they get shadow banned and stuff like that. So we're going to try something new in the form of a new channel just for clips. So please make sure you go over to youtube.com/@thebestcult and subscribe to the clip channel for all of the woke cringe insanity. Where the hell is Joe Biden? Yeah, I kind of feel like I should have gotten a beer bill. At least one, possibly several. Trendlin, you haven't sent me whatever whatever podcast you want me to watch. Remember to pick one out. Or confirm you want me to watch the one with that fat person. Like, why is it impossible for people to be on time? One of my biggest pet peeves in the world is when people are like chronically late. It drives me goddamn crazy. Like, every once in a while, it's okay to be late, and I operate on Libertarian Standard Time. But, like, he's addressing the nation. Can we please take this a little bit more seriously? Yep. We're waiting. We're waiting. We're waiting. We're waiting. While we're waiting, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. and on Saturdays at 6 p.m. for Socialism Saturday. I will show you the most dystopian shit you've ever seen in the world. No, you haven't seen anything like what I'm showing you because no one else on the internet is doing it. So please make sure you are subscribed and join us for the real shit show that never ends. Monday through Friday at 5 p.m., Saturdays at 6 p.m. for real live socialism. Should have known. Should have known this wasn't going to start on time. I'm giving him a couple more minutes, then we're going to go back to Putin. Let's see. Fish Addict says, I got an advanced copy of the Biden speech, and he clearly says the biggest threat to our is extreme MAGA who will destroy... And what was I saying? Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. I am indeed knitting. I am. This is a design of my own. I'm knitting a shawl. I don't know what it's going to look like yet. I don't know what I'm going to do after I get done this section. I got to be creative about it. It'll work itself out. I like what it is so far, though. I'm digging the mesh. I'm digging the mesh around this like square thing. And it's very light, and it's got what is that called? It's got this very light, soft yarn. I forget what that yarn is called, but it's like a lace weight yarn. Mesh is a pain in the ass to do when you're knitting, but it looks so cool. So it's worth it, I guess, in the long run, but it is a pain in the butt. No, it's not cashmere. It's not melted baby Surrey. It's I forget. It's the fluffy one. It's the really thin, fluffy one. That's like really, really, really thin. I just cannot remember what that's called. Oh, kid silk. Kid silk. That's what it is. It's kid silk. Mohair. Thank you. Mohair. Jesus Christ. Well, I mean, it's kind of stupid though, right? To draw attention away from the interview because like the interview's on demand. Like the interview's not live. Like we can all go back and watch later. This is not an emergency. What is an emergency is why the President of the United States is incapable of being on time for a national address that he's interrupting our day for, like we have any obligation to pay attention. I don't know. Does anyone have any topics they want me to rant about while we're waiting? I'm not guaranteeing I'll rant about any topic, but if there are any questions or anything you guys want me to rant about, just to kill time, because we're on Joe Biden's time now. We're not doing white supremacy time right now. We're on Joe Biden time. We're on Joe Biden dementia time. Yeah, exactly. This is so important that he's already 10 minutes late. So critical to go live while people are eating dinner or watching an interview where Vladimir Putin is giving the longest land blessing in world history. I don't want to rant. I don't have anything else to say about him right now. I appreciate the no, we're not going to talk about astrology right now. Joshua's not here. Like, do I have to, the chat is disabled. Do I have to like restart, like reload or something? Is it already going and I just didn't reload? No. It is live. Okay, it's live. It's already going. Oh, sure, Trendlin. I'll take the yarn. I appreciate it. Two minutes? They're saying it's 2 minutes? Okay. Thank you. Ugh, Deb does not deserve any more of my time. No, the Fool is a great card. The Fool is a great tarot card. It stands for like beginnings and like this useful kind of exuberance and getting lost in what you're doing and not worrying about the bullshit of the world. I mean, I guess that is kind of a good card for Biden right now because he obviously and clearly has dementia. But still, the Fool is such a fun card. I don't want to associate that with Biden. Did I go over the Ukraine? No. Like, I'm not going to spend time doing that. Like, I just made the assumption that it was a shitty bill from the very beginning. And I'm glad it failed, although it's a little annoying to me. It shouldn't have been that close. Why are Republicans kicking George Santos out of Congress when they're getting votes like that? Republicans are so useless. The four goals of the woke left are gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. First, they gain power by getting into positions of institutional power. That means jobs they can't be fired from. The left doesn't gain power by political power. The left gains power by institutional power. They use that power to cause problems that destabilize the system. They do this because they want to cause problems. Causing problems is a feature. It's not a bug. If you wonder why the left always veers towards chaos, Tim Pool, it's because they want to cause problems. That is part of the goal, because then they use those problems to destabilize capitalism and then usher in their Marxist utopia. Okay, why is this going with a captions when I don't see Biden? Okay. Why does this have captions? Oh.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Let me say a few things before I take your questions. As you know, the special counsel released his findings today
Dementia.
about their look into my handling of classified documents. I was pleased to see he reached a firm conclusion that no charges should be brought against me in this case. This was an exhaustive investigation going back more than 40 years, even into the 1970s when I was still a new United States Senator. The special counsel acknowledged I cooperated completely. I did not throw up any roadblocks. I sought no delays. In fact, I was so determined to give the special counsel what he needed, I went forward with a 5-hour in-person interview over 2 days on October the 8th and 9th of last year, even though Israel had just been attacked by Hamas on the 7th, and I was very occupied.
We all know Israel's your top priority, Joe.
International crisis. I was especially pleased to see special counsel make clear the stark distinction and difference between this case and Mr. Trump's case. The special counsel wrote, and I quote, "Several material distinctions between Mr. Trump's case and Mr. Biden's are clear," continuing to quote, "Most notably, after given multiple chances to return classified documents to avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie
Biden called a
about it.
press conference to
In
complain about Trump.
contrast, went on
Is
to
that
say
what this
Mr.
is?
Biden turned in classified
He's
documents
complaining about
to
Trump.
the National Archives and the Department of Justice, consented to the search of multiple locations, including his home, sat for a voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation, end of quote. I've seen the headlines since the report was released about my willful retention of documents. These assertions are not only misleading, they're just plain wrong. On page 215, if you had a chance, I know it's a thick document. On page 215, the report of the special counsel found the exact opposite. Here's what he wrote. There is, in fact, a shortage of evidence that I willfully retained classified materials related to Afghanistan. On page 12, the special counsel also wrote for another documents. The decision to decline criminal charges was straightforward. The evidence suggests that Mr. Biden did not willfully retain these documents. The evidence said I did not willfully retain these documents. In addition, I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that
Yeah, I kind
don't
of feel the
remember
same way, Brucey.
when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business. Let me tell you something. Some
Now
of you
he's playing the
comment, I
dead
wear
son
since
card
the day he died, every single day.
because he wants sympathy because he has dementia.
Every Memorial Day, we hold a service remembering him, attending by friends.
Oh
and
my God, is
family and
Biden gonna
people who loved
cry?
him. I don't need anyone.
For
I don't
real.
need anyone to remind me when he passed away.
Biden is sneering and is about to cry.
Simple truth is, I sat for a 5-hour interview over 2 days of events going back 40 years. At the same time I was managing an international crisis, their task was to make a decision about whether to move forward with charges in this case. That's their decision to make. That's the counsel's decision to make. That's his job. And they decided not to move forward. For any extraneous commentary, they don't know what they're talking about. It has no place in this report. The bottom line is the matter is now closed. I'm going to continue.
Wait,
what
he's
I've
saying
always
that they're
focused
not
on.
allowed to bring up
My
the
job of
dementia?
being President of the United States of America. Now,
Is that
thank
what
you,
he
and I'll
just
take
said?
some questions.
He was like, how dare they talk about my mental health?
Something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I'm president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally out.
How is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak. That's
Do you
my
feel your memory has gotten worse, Mr.
No, look,
President?
my memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen? I guess I just forgot what was going on.
Mr. President.
If voters have concerns about your age, how are you going to assuage them? And do you fear that this report is only going to fuel further concerns about your age?
Only by some of you.
Mr. President.
He looks like a doddering old man. Oh my God.
You take responsibility for at least being careless with classified material.
I take responsibility for not having seen exactly what my staff was doing. It goes in and points out things that appeared in my garage, things that came out of my home, things that were moved not by me, but my staff.
You're responsible for your staff, Joe. Look at the body language. Look at the body language. This is great.
You would respond with the words, watch me.
Watch
Many
me.
American people have been watching and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is
This
your
according
judgment.
to public
That is
polling.
not the
They-
Please get in an
judgment
old
of the
man
press.
fight.
They
Please
express
do it.
concerns about your mental acuity. They say that you are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your
Because
answer to
I'm the
that
most
question?
qualified person in this country to be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
Do you believe that? Why are you confusing the names of world leaders?
I did not share classified information. I did not share it. With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not. Well, no, he did not say that. He did not say that. Well, let me answer your question. The fact of the matter is, what I didn't want repeated, I didn't want him to know, and I didn't read it to him, was I had written a long memorandum to President Obama why we should not be in Afghanistan. And I was multiple pages. And so what I was referring to, I said classified. I should have said should be private, because it was a contact between the president and the vice president as to what was going on. That's what it is referring to. It was not classified information in that document. That was not classified.
They're going for blood. They're going for blood. Oh my God.
When you look back at this incident, is there anything you would do differently now? And do you think that a special prosecutor should have been appointed in the first place in both of these cases?
First of all, what I would have done
somewhere in Florida,
is
Trump is
oversee
laughing.
the transfer of the material that was in my office, in my offices. I should have done that. If I go back, I didn't have the responsibility to that. That was my staff was supposed to do that. And
Biden ain't going to be the nominee.
And my staff did not do it in the way that, for example, I didn't know how half the boxes got in my garage until I found out staff gathered them up, put them together, and took them to the garage in my home. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. It was in my house. It wasn't out in, like in Mar-a-Lago, in a public place where, and none of it was high
Trump lives at Mar-a-Lago.
Didn't have any of that red stuff on it. You know what I mean? Around the corners.
That is Trump's house.
And so I wish I had paid more attention to how the documents were being moved and where. I thought they were being moved to the archives. I thought all of it was being moved. That's what I thought. Now, what was the last part of your question?
Whether a special counsel should have been appointed in this case and in the case of your rival president, former president.
I think a special counsel should have been appointed. And the reason I think a special counsel should have been appointed is because I did not want to be in a position that they looked at Trump and weren't going to look at me, just like they looked at the vice president. And the fact is, they made a firm conclusion. I did not break the law, period. Thank you all very, very much.
That's it? That's it? Look at his daughter out of the room.
He has ordered the idea.
Go back. Do it, Joe. Dementia rage.
I'm of the view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate.
What? Where is this coming from?
Open the gate on the Israeli side. I've been pushing really hard to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza. There are a lot of innocent people who are starving, a lot of innocent people who are in trouble and dying, and it's got to stop, number one. Number two, I was also in a position that I'm the guy that made the case that we have to do much more to increase the amount of material going in, including fuel, including other items. I've been on the phone with the Qataris, I've been on the phone with the Egyptians, I've been on the phone with the Saudis to get as much aid as we possibly can into Gaza. There are innocent people, innocent women and children who are also in badly in need of help. And so that's what we're pushing. And I'm pushing very hard now to deal with this hostage ceasefire because, as a, you know, I've been working tirelessly in this deal. How can I say this without revealing it? To lead to a sustained pause.
He's calling for a ceasefire?
In the actions taking
Did
place
Biden just accidentally announce he's calling for a ceasefire?
And because I think if we can get this delay for that.
Oh,
Joe.
Delay, oh no.
We would be able to extend that so that we could increase the prospect that this fighting in Gaza changes. There's also negotiations. You may recall in the very beginning.
Oh, the Jews are about to eat his ass. Not literally.
I was in contact with the Saudis and others to work out a deal where they would recognize Israel's right to exist, let them make them part of the Middle East, recognize them fully in return for certain things that the United States would commit to do. And the commitment that we were proposing to do.
Oh yeah,
related
he just
to
done fucked himself.
Two items. I'm not going to go in detail.
Oh yeah.
One of them was to deal with the protection against their arch enemy to the northwest, northeast, I should say.
Press has got to keep him talking.
The second one,
please keep
by
him
providing
talking.
ammunition and material for them to defend themselves. Coincidentally, that's the time frame when this broke out. I have no proof what I'm about to say, but it's not unreasonable to suspect that the Hamas understood what was about to take place and wanted to break it up before it happened.
No, don't let him leave that room. Don't let him leave the room. Don't let him leave. Oh my God, Biden is so fucked. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10 in the chat, how fucked is Joe Biden? 1 being not fucked at all, 10 being totally and completely fucked. What do you got? Like, Biden just, first of all, basically almost had a dementia rage meltdown against the press and was going to leave the room and then came back to announce on impromptu that he's basically calling for a ceasefire, which is going to piss off the Zionists something fierce. Biden is so fucked. Oh, that was so great. And the press, oh my God. The press is so pissed at him. Like, this is not going to stop. This is going to be like, I might be getting back into politics now, because this is going to be glorious. Biden's downfall is going to be glorious. Yes, the spinning of this. Oh God. See, and some of you didn't want to watch. Some of you didn't want to watch. Some of you didn't want to leave the Vladimir Putin land blessing to watch the Joe Biden, but it was worth it. The wisdom of crowds. Yep, that was worth it. Worth it. All right. Biden has addressed the nation and shown us all that he has the dementia that we all know he has. Now we have to behave responsibly and go back to Putin to see if Putin actually says anything beyond a history lesson. Because we listen to hardcore socialists, we can listen to Vladimir Putin, but dodder on about the 16th century fucking Russia or something. All right, back to business. As a reminder, if this stream gets pulled off of YouTube, I also have my Rumble stream going, so you guys are welcome to head over there. Make sure you are subscribed to me on Rumble, just in case. I will put the link in the chat. I am also streaming on X if you would prefer to watch me there. But we're going to keep going. I feel like I've been very responsible with this so far. I'm not taking Putin's side or anything because my husband's Ukrainian, so that's the way it goes. Back to the land blessing.
It's in the Middle East, in Iraq. We were building relations with the United States in a very soft, prudent, cautious manner. I repeatedly raised the issue that the United States should not support separatism or terrorism in the North Caucasus. But they continue to do it anyway. And political support, information support, financial support, even military support came from the United States and its satellites for terrorist groups in the Caucasus. I once raised this issue with my colleague, also the President of the United States. He says, "It's impossible. Do you have proof?" I said, "Yes." I was prepared for this conversation, and I gave him that proof. He looked at it, and you know what he said? "I apologize, but that's what happened." I'll quote. He says, "Well, I'm gonna kick their ass." We waited and waited for some response. There was no reply. I said to the FSB director, "Write to the CIA, what is the result of the conversation with President?" He wrote once, twice, and then we got a reply. We have the answer in the archive. The CIA replied, "We have been working with the opposition in Russia. We believe that this is the right thing to do, and we will keep on doing it." Just ridiculous. Well, okay. We realized that it was out of the question.
Forces in opposition to you. So you're saying the CIA is trying to overthrow your government.
Of course, they meant in that particular case the separatists, the terrorists who fought with us in the Caucasus. That's who they called the opposition. This is the second point.
Yep.
The third moment is a very important one. Is the moment when the US missile defense system was created. The beginning. We persuaded for a long time not to do it in the United States. Moreover, after was invited by Bush Jr.'s father, Bush Sr., to visit his place on the ocean, I had a very serious conversation with President Bush and his team. I proposed that the United States, Russia, and Europe jointly create a missile defense system.
As I have been saying repeatedly to every single person who has said this, I am also on Rumble right now. And so if the stream gets shut down on YouTube, you can go over on Rumble.
That we believe, if created unilaterally, threatens our security, despite the fact that the United States officially said that it was being created against missile threats from Iran. That was the justification for the deployment of the missile defense system. I suggested working together, Russia, the United States, and Europe. They said it was very interesting. They asked me, "Are you serious?" I said, "Absolutely."
Let me ask, what year was this?
I don't remember. It is easy to find out on the internet when I was in the USA at the invitation of Bush Sr. It is even easier to learn from someone I'm going to tell you about. I was told it was very interesting. I said, just imagine if we could tackle such a global strategic security challenge together. The world will change. We'll probably have disputes, probably economic and even political ones, but we could drastically change the situation in the world. He says yes, and asks, "Are you serious?" I said, "Of course. We need to think about it," I'm told. I said, "Go ahead, please." Then Secretary of Defense Gates, former director of CIA, and Secretary of State Rice came in here, in this cabinet, right here at this table. They sat on this table. Me, the foreign minister, the Russian defense minister on that side. They said to me, "Yes, we have thought about it. We agree." I said, "Thank God, great, but with some exceptions."
So twice you've described US presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected in your telling.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, remember
in the
to go
end,
to the
they
movie
just
night
told us
poll
to get lost.
in
I'm not
local,
going to tell you the details because
indeed.locals.com.
I think it's incorrect. After all, it was confidential conversation. But our proposal was declined. That's a fact. It was right then when I said, "Look, but then we will be forced to take countermeasures. We will create such strike systems that will certainly overcome missile defense systems." The answer was, "We're not doing this against you, and you do what you want," assuming that it is not against us, not against the United States.
Was Anomaly saying anything to indicate that he was on Russia's side? Because I am clear, I'm not on Russia's side. I'm not defending Russia. I'm not defending Putin. My husband's Ukrainian. Because I suspect that that's actually what the issue is. I suspect the issue is not the interview itself, because apparently the interview is on Tucker Carlson's YouTube channel. I suspect the issue is that people who are getting shut down are like basically on Putin's side. And YouTube doesn't like that.
I said, "Okay, very well. That's the way it went." And we created hypersonic systems with intercontinental range, and we continue to develop them. We are now ahead of everyone. the United States and the other countries, in terms of the development
That's just
of
great.
hypersonic strike systems,
That's
and we
just
are
great,
improving them every
Joe
day.
Biden. That's just
But it
great.
wasn't us. We proposed to go the other way, and we were pushed back. Now, about NATO's expansion to the east. Well, we were promised no NATO to the east, not an inch to the east, as we were told. And then what? They said, well, it's not enshrined on paper, so we'll expand. So there were 5 waves of expansion: the Baltic states, the whole of Eastern Europe, and so on. And now I come to the main thing. They have come to the Ukraine, ultimately. In 2008, at the summit in Bucharest, they declared that the
Finally, the
doors
point.
for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO were open. Now about how decisions are made there. Germany, France seem to be against it.
Yeah, so if people didn't catch this in Biden's like debacle of a press conference, Biden was talking about the president of Egypt, and he called the president of Egypt the president of Mexico. Like you can't make this shit up. Literally in the press conference where Biden is all pissed off because his mental acuity has been questioned, he confused the president of Egypt with the president of Mexico. I don't know if that was clear to everyone, but that actually did happen. And then he walked away, and then he came back. No, this was after he came back. And then and people aren't picking up on this. Biden accidentally announced that he's calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. I don't know why people aren't picking up on this. Like, it wasn't like Biden didn't stand there and go, I'm calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, but Biden basically in every single other way said, I'm calling for a ceasefire in Gaza to get aid to Gaza. I don't know why more people aren't picking up on that. Biden is about to have his ass handed to him for that. And it's going to be glorious. And I don't even care. I'm here for it. Like, pop me the popcorn. I'm here.
As well as some other European countries. But then, as it turned out later, President Bush, and he's such a tough guy, a tough politician, as I was told later, he exerted pressure on us and we had to agree. It's ridiculous. It's like kindergarten. Where are the guarantees? What kindergarten is this? What kind of people are these? Who are they? You see, they were pressed, they agreed. And then they say, Ukraine won't be in the NATO, you know? I say, I don't know. I know you agreed in 2008. Why won't you agree in the future? Well, they pressed us then. I say, why won't they press you tomorrow? And you'll agree again. Well, it's nonsensical. Who's there to talk to? I just don't understand. We're ready to talk. But with whom? Where are the guarantees? None. So they started to develop the territory of Ukraine. Whatever is there, I have told you the background, how this territory developed, what kind of relations there were with Russia. Every second or third person there has always had some ties with Russia. And during the elections in already independent, sovereign Ukraine, which gained its independence as a result of the Declaration of Independence. And by the way, it says that Ukraine is a neutral state, and in 2008, suddenly the doors or gates to NATO were open to it. Oh, come on. This is not how we agreed. Now, all the presidents that have come to power in Ukraine, they relied on electorate with a good attitude to Russia in one way or the other. This is the southeast of Ukraine. This is a large number of people. And it was very difficult to dissuade this electorate, which had a positive attitude towards Russia. Viktor Yanukovych came to power, and how? The first time he won after President Kuchma, they organized a third round, which is not provided for in the constitution of Ukraine. This is a coup d'etat. Just imagine, someone in the United States wouldn't like the outcome.
In 2014?
Before that. No, this was before that. After President Kuchma, Viktor Yanukovych won the elections. However, his opponents did not recognize that victory. The US supported the opposition, and the third round was scheduled. What is this? This is a coup. The US supported it, and the winner of the third round came to power. Imagine if in the US something was not to someone's liking, and the third round of election, which the US Constitution does not provide for, was organized. Nonetheless, it was done in Ukraine. Okay, Viktor Yushchenko, who was considered a pro-Western politician, came to power. Fine, we have built relations with him as well. He came to Moscow with...
I mean, I know we're going back to the Biden thing, but Putin isn't saying anything interesting, so we might as well talk about things that are interesting while we suffer through this interview. Like, they really did, though. Like, they offered Joe Biden up on a silver platter to a press that wanted to kill him. Not literally, but figuratively. Like, I wish they put the cameras on the press in that room, because like you could feel like the seething, and it was like Biden didn't have to do that address. That did not have to happen. Everyone realizes that, right? Like, most people don't care about any of this. They really don't. This is only for people who are like hyper connected and hyper tuned into this stuff. Biden did not have to do that address. And his entire team set him up to dodder out there and get fed to the wolves. And they all knew it was coming. They're setting him up to get to get him off the ticket. Like, this should be obvious now. There ain't no way Biden's going to be that nominee. Not after today. He effed himself. No, conservatives. No. Not everything is a distraction. Jesus Christ. This is an on-demand conservatives. And I know this is like something that conservatives say, so I know that it's coming from a conservative, and I've heard it several times. This is an on-demand interview in which Vladimir Putin is literally saying nothing. That press conference was not a distraction this was not some sort of grand plan to distract the world from Tucker Carlson interviewing Vladimir Putin. Do you think the US government doesn't know that Vladimir Putin didn't really say anything in this interview other than give like an hour and a half long land blessing? Of course they knew. Of course they know. Like, they've already hacked into all of Tucker's stuff. Of course they know what's in this interview. That press conference was not about this. That press conference was about they need Biden off the ticket, and they all know it. And so now they're setting him up to have the opportunity to replace him on the ticket. That's what that was about.
The visits. We visited Kiev. I visited too. We met in an informal setting. If he's pro-Western, so be it. It's fine. Let people do their job. The situation should have developed inside the independent Ukraine itself. As a result of Kuchma's leadership, things got worse, and Viktor Yanukovych came to power after all. Maybe he wasn't the best president and politician. I don't know. I don't want to give assessments. However, the issue of the association with the EU came up. We have always been lenient to this. Suit yourself. But when we read through the Treaty of Association, it turned out to be a problem for us, since we had a free trade zone and open customs borders with Ukraine, which under this association had to open its borders for Europe, which could have led to flooding of our market. We said, no, this is not going to work. We shall close our borders with Ukraine then. The customs borders, that is. Yanukovych started to calculate how much Ukraine was going to gain, how much to lose, and said to his European partners, I need more time to think before signing. The moment he said that, the opposition began to take destructive steps, which were supported by the West. It all came down to Maidan and a coup in Ukraine.
So he did more trade with Russia than with the EU. Ukraine did.
Of course. It's not even the matter of trade volume, although for the most part it is. It is the matter of cooperation ties, which the entire Ukrainian economy was based on. The cooperation ties between the enterprises were very close since the times of the Soviet Union. One enterprise there used to produce components to be assembled both in Russia and Ukraine and vice versa. They used to be very close ties. A coup d'etat was committed, although I shall not delve into details now, as I find doing it inappropriate, the US told us. Calm Yanukovych down, and we will calm the opposition. Let the situation unfold in the scenario of a political settlement. We said, all right, agreed, let's do it this way. As the Americans requested, Yanukovych did use neither the armed forces nor the police, yet the armed opposition committed a coup in Kiev. What is that supposed to mean? Who do you think you are? I wanted to ask the then US leadership.
With the backing of whom?
With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although it is a serious organization. I understand. My former vis-a-vis in the sense that I served in the first main directorate, Soviet Union's intelligence service. They have always been our opponents.
I know that this is like, I'm just entertaining myself at this point because we're going to watch this interview because that's what we do. But like, I bet Vladimir Putin's really good in bed is what I'm thinking about right now. I'm like, I bet he's like, I bet he's like one of the most powerful men in the world. That's just what's going through my head right now. Like this is what every time like I like, you know, I always like, I don't know why my mind goes there. I'm just like, I feel like you can tell a lot about a man based on what they're like in bed. Are they powerful in real life? Are they not? Are they, you know, I'm just saying, I feel like it would be a decent experience.
A job is a job. Technically, they did everything right. They achieved their goal of changing the government.
Gets pulled
However,
down.
from political standpoint, it was a colossal mistake.
Exactly.
Surely it was.
Exactly. This is like one of those moments where he's not a young man, but you know he's an experienced man, and you know he knows what to do.
Political leadership's miscalculation. They should have seen what it would evolve into. So, in 2008, the doors of NATO were opened for Ukraine. In 2014, there was a coup. They started persecuting those who did not accept the coup, and it was indeed a coup. They created a threat to Crimea, which we had to take under our protection. They launched a war in Donbass in 2014 with the use of aircraft and artillery against civilians. This is when it all started. There's a video of aircraft attacking Donetsk from above. They launched a large-scale military operation, then another one.
To the revolution. Okay.
When they failed, they started to prepare the next one. All this against the background of military development of this territory and opening of NATO's doors. How could we not express concern over what was happening? From our side, this would have been a culpable negligence. That's what it would have been. It's just that the US political leadership pushed us to the line we could not cross, because doing so could have ruined Russia itself. Besides, we could not leave our brothers in faith, in fact, a part of Russian people, in the face of this war machine.
But that was 8 years before the current conflict started. So what was the trick?
Who do you think is better in bed? Tucker Carlson or Vladimir Putin? 1 in the chat for Tucker Carlson is better in bed. 2 in the chat for Vladimir Putin is better in bed. Men can answer too. You guys can pause it. I'm not saying you have to want to sleep with them, but if you want to issue a guess, you're welcome to. 1 for Tucker Carlson is better in bed. 2 for Vladimir Putin is better in bed. Yep, looks like consensus is Putin. Consensus is Putin. Lots of 2s in the chat. Yep, thought so. No offense to Tucker. I'm sure I'm sure it's a very lovely love-making experience with Tucker, and it's like all very nice and like all that, but like, you know, Putin's better in bed.
Trigger for you? What was the moment where you decided you had to do this?
Спровоцировал конфликт изначально.
Initially, it was the coup in Ukraine that provoked the conflict. By the way, back then the representatives of 3 European countries, Germany, Poland, and France, arrived. They were the guarantors of the signed agreement between the government of Yanukovych and the opposition. They signed it as guarantors. Despite that, the opposition committed a coup, and all these countries pretended that they didn't remember that they were guarantors of the peaceful settlement. They just threw it in the stove right away, and nobody recalls that. I don't know if the US know anything about the agreement between the opposition and the authorities, and its 3 guarantors who, instead of bringing this whole situation back in the political field, supported the coup. Although it was meaningless, believe me, because President Yanukovych agreed to all conditions. He was ready to hold an early election, which he had no chance of winning, frankly speaking. Everyone knew that. Then why the coup? Why the victims? Why threatening Crimea? Why launching an operation in Donbass? This I do not understand. That is exactly what the miscalculation is. CIA did its job to complete the coup. I think one of the deputy secretaries of state said that it cost a large sum of money, almost 5 billion. But the political mistake was colossal. Why would they have to do that? All this could have been done legally, without victims, without military action, without losing Crimea. We would have never considered to even lift a finger if it hadn't been for the bloody developments on Maidan. Because we agreed with the fact that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, our borders should be along the borders of former Union's republics. We agreed to that. But we never agreed to NATO's expansion, and moreover, we never agreed that Ukraine would be in NATO. We did not agree to NATO bases there without any discussion with us. For decades, we kept asking, don't do this, don't do that. And what triggered the latest events? Firstly, the current Ukrainian leadership declared that it would not implement the Minsk agreements, which had been signed, as you know, after the events of 2014 in Minsk, where the plan of peaceful settlement in Donbass was set forth. But no, the current Ukrainian leadership, foreign minister, all other officials, and then president himself said that they don't like anything about the Minsk agreements. In other words, they were not going to implement it. A year or a year and a half ago, former leaders of Germany and France said openly to the whole world that they indeed signed the Minsk agreements, but they never intended to
Tucker
implement
really
them.
should have interrupted
They
him more.
simply led
Like,
us
this
by
is
the
just
nose.
ridiculous.
Was there anyone for you to talk to? Did you call a U.S. President's Secretary of State and say, if you keep militarizing Ukraine with NATO forces, this is going to be we're going to act?
We talked about this all the time. We addressed the United States and European countries' leadership to stop these developments immediately, to implement the Minsk agreements. Frankly speaking, I didn't know how we were going to do this, but I was ready to implement them. These agreements were complicated for Ukraine. They included lots of elements of those Donbass territories' independence. That's true. However, I was absolutely confident, and I'm saying this to you now. I honestly believe that if we managed to convince the residents of Donbass, and we had to work hard to convince them to return to the Ukrainian statehood, then gradually the wounds would start to heal. When this part of territory reintegrated itself into a common social environment, when the pensions and social benefits were paid again, all the pieces would gradually fall into place. No, nobody wanted that. Everybody wanted to resolve the
Is this more boring or less boring than watching socialism? 1 in the chat if it's more boring than watching socialism. 2 in the chat if it's less boring than watching socialism. We're only at we're only a half hour. No, okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. I was like, I thought we were only a half hour into it. I was like, okay.
issue by
Like,
military force
this is
only.
hell.
But we could not let that happen. And the situation got to the point when the Ukrainian side announced, no, we will not do anything. They also started preparing for military action. It was they who started the war in 2014. Our goal is to stop this war. And we did not start this war in 2022. This is an attempt to stop it.
You did, though.
Do you think you've stopped
You did
it now?
start the war.
I mean, have you achieved your aims?
No, we haven't achieved our aims yet, because one of them is denazification. This means the prohibition of all kinds of neo-Nazi movements. This is one of the problems that we discussed during the negotiation process, which ended in Istanbul early this year. And it was not our initiative, because we were told by the Europeans, in particular, that it was necessary to create conditions for the final signing of the documents. My counterparts in France and Germany said, how can you imagine them signing a treaty with a gun to their heads? The troops should be pulled back from Kiev. I said, all right. We withdrew the troops from Kiev. As soon as we pulled back our troops from Kiev, our Ukrainian negotiators immediately threw all our agreements reached in Istanbul into the bin and got prepared for a long-standing armed confrontation with the help of the United States and its satellites in Europe. That is how the situation has developed, and that is how it looks now.
But what is, pardon my ignorance, what is denazification?
Yeah, what does that mean? That's a good question, Tucker. How many Nazis are there in Ukraine?
That is what I want to talk about right now.
He doesn't want to talk
It is
about
a
it.
very important issue. Denazification.
Listen, man, I know that Nazi battalion exists, and I denounce that. Like, I'm not saying that that's a good thing or anything, but like, how many Nazis does Putin think are in Ukraine exactly, like, right now? Beyond that Nazi battalion, and I don't think that's a good idea. I'd be fine with them getting rid of that. But like, is this really the biggest problem that exists that we have to go into a 2-year war for?
After gaining independence, Ukraine began to search, as some Western analysts say, its identity. And it came up with nothing better than to build this identity upon some false heroes who collaborated with Hitler. I have already said that in the early 19th century, when the theorists of independence and sovereignty of Ukraine appeared, they assumed that an independent Ukraine should have very good relations with Russia. But due to the historical development, those territories were part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Poland, where Ukrainians were persecuted and treated quite brutally, as well as were subject to cruel behavior. There were also attempts to destroy their identity. All this remained in the memory of the people. When World War II broke out, part of this extremely nationalist elite collaborated with Hitler, believing that he would bring them freedom. The German troops, even the SS troops, made Hitler's collaborators do the dirtiest work of exterminating the Polish and Jewish population. Hence this brutal massacre of the Polish and Jewish population, as well as the Russian population too.
Вот отсюда вот эта жестокая резня.
This was led by the persons who are well known, Bandera,
Во главе
Shukevich.
стояли,
It was those people who were made national heroes. That is the problem. And we are constantly told that nationalism and neo-Nazism exist in other countries as well. Yes, they are seedlings, but we uproot them, and other countries fight against them. But Ukraine is not the case. These people have been made into national heroes in Ukraine. Monuments to those people have been erected. They are displayed on flags. Their names are shouted by crowds that walk with torches, as it was in Nazi Germany.
Они на флагах, они их имена кричат.
These were people who exterminated Poles, Jews, and Russians.
Это люди, которые уничтожали поляков, евреев и русских.
It is necessary to stop this practice and prevent the dissemination of this concept. I say that Ukrainians are part of the one Russian people. They say, no, we are a separate people. Okay, fine. If they consider themselves a separate people, they have the right to do so, but not on the basis of Nazism, the Nazi ideology.
Would you be satisfied with the territory that you have now?
As my husband has explained to me, Ukraine is older than Russia. So that's the basis of them declaring that they're a separate people is actually the fact that it's older than fucking Russia. It's not based on Nazification. That's retarded.
Нет, сейчас закончим. Вы же задали вопрос по неонацизму и денацификации.
I will finish answering the question. You just asked a question about neo-Nazism and denazification. Look,
we had to sit through an hour and a half.
The president of Ukraine visited Canada. The story is well known, but being silenced in the Western countries. The Canadian Parliament introduced a man who, as the Speaker of the Parliament said, fought against the Russians during the World War II. Well, who fought against the Russians during the World War II? Hitler and his accomplices. It turned out that this man served in the SS troops. He personally killed Russians, Poles, and Jews. The SS troops consisted of Ukrainian nationalists who did this dirty work. The president of Ukraine stood up with the entire Parliament of Canada and applauded this man. How can this be imagined? The president of Ukraine himself, by the way, is a Jew by nationality.
Really, my question is, what do you do about it? I mean, Hitler's been dead for 80 years. Nazi Germany no longer exists. And so, true. And so I think what you're saying is you want to extinguish or at least control Ukrainian nationalism. But how? How do you do that?
Вот послушайте меня. Ваш вопрос очень тонкий.
Listen to me. Your question is very subtle, and I can tell you what I think. Do not take offense.
Of course.
Он, казалось бы, тонкий, он очень противный, этот вопрос.
This question appears to be subtle. It is quite pesky. You say Hitler has been dead for so many years, 80 years. But his example lives on. People who exterminated Jews, Russians, and Poles are alive. And the president, the current president of today's Ukraine, applauds him in the Canadian Parliament, gives a standing ovation. Can we say that we have completely uprooted this ideology if what we see is happening today? That is what denazification is in our understanding.
Isn't that the problem with the Canadian Parliament?
We have to get rid of those people who maintain this concept and support this practice and try to preserve it. That is what denazification is. That is what we mean.
Right. My question was a little more specific. It was, of course, not a defense of Nazis, neo or otherwise. It was a practical question. You don't control the entire country. You don't control Kiev. You don't seem like you want to. So how do you eliminate a culture or an ideology or feelings or a view of history?
Wait, but like
in a country,
but like isn't the fact that the Canadian Parliament applauded a Nazi, isn't that a problem for Canada? Isn't that a problem for Canada?
that you don't control. What do you do about that?
А вы знаете, как вам не покажется странным, в ходе переговоров в Стамбуле,
You know, as strange as it may seem to you, during the negotiations in Istanbul, we did agree that we have it all in writing. Neo-Nazism would not be cultivated in Ukraine, including that it would be prohibited at the legislative level. Mr. Carlson, we agreed on that. This, it turns out, can be done during the negotiation process. And there's nothing humiliating for Ukraine as a modern civilized state. Is any state allowed to promote Nazism? It is not, is
Well,
it?
apparently Canada
That
is,
is
so you
it.
don't have a problem with that. But it's Ukraine's fault that Canada's doing that? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Will there be talks, and why haven't there been talks about resolving the conflict in Ukraine? Peace talks.
они были, они дошли до очень высокой стадии согласования позиций, сложно.
They have been. They reached a very high stage of coordination of positions in a complex process, but still they were almost finalized. But after we withdrew our troops from Kiev, as I have already said, the other side threw away all these agreements and obeyed the instructions of Western countries,
I believe
European
that.
countries,
I
and the
absolutely
United
believe that.
States
I
to
believe
fight
that
Russia
happened.
to the bitter
Because the
end.
United States enabled Ukraine.
Moreover, the
this
president
is a
of
fucking
Ukraine
proxy
has
war.
legislated a ban on negotiating with Russia. He signed a decree forbidding everyone to negotiate with
It's
Russia.
stupid.
But how are
Right.
we going to negotiate if he forbade himself and everyone to do this?
Because Zelensky is getting
We know that
so
he is
much
putting
money
forward
from
some
them.
ideas about the settlement, but in order to agree on something, we need to have a dialogue. Is that not right?
Well, but you wouldn't be speaking to the Ukrainian president, you'd be speaking to the American president. When was the last time you spoke to Joe Biden?
I cannot remember when I talked to him. I do not remember. We can look it up.
You don't remember?
No. Why? Do I have to remember everything? I have my own things to do. We have domestic political affairs.
Well, he's funding the war that you're fighting, so
No,
I
this
would
is-
think that would be memorable.
Good question, Tucker.
Ну да, он финансирует.
Well, yes, he funds, but I talked to him before the special military operation, of course. And I said to him then, by the way, I will not go into details, I never do, but I said to him then, I believe that you are making a huge mistake of historic proportions by supporting everything that is happening there in Ukraine by pushing Russia away. I told him repeatedly, by the way. I think that would be correct if I stop here.
What did he say?
Ask him, please. It is easier for you. You are a citizen of the United States. Go and ask him. It is not appropriate for me to comment on our conversation.
But you haven't spoken to him since before February of 2022.
Нет, мы не разговаривали. Но у нас есть...
No, we haven't spoken.
Кстати говоря, вот
Certain contacts are being maintained, though. Speaking of which,
про мое предложение...
do you remember what I told you about my proposal to work together on a missile defense system?
Yes.
Да. Вот можно спросить у всех. Они же
You can
все
ask all of
живы,
them.
здоровы.
All of them are safe and sound, thank God.
Бывший президент.
The former president, Condoleezza, is safe and sound, and I think Mr. Gates and the current director of the intelligence agency, Mr. Burns, the then ambassador to Russia, in my opinion, are very
Yes.
successful ambassador.
Они все свидетели этих разговоров.
They were all witnesses to these conversations.
То же самое.
Ask
I
them.
want to bang my head against the desk. I'm so
Same
bored
here.
right now.
If you are interested in what Mr. President Biden responded to me, ask him. At any rate, I talked to him about it.
I'm definitely interested, but from the outside, it seems like this could devolve or evolve into something that brings the entire world into conflict and could initiate a nuclear launch. And so why don't you just call Biden and say, let's work this out?
It's a good question.
А чего решать? Все очень... всё
What's
очень
there to
просто.
work out?
На-
It's very simple. I repeat,
Есть контакты по линии, там различные...
we have
агентства.
contacts through various agencies.
Я вам скажу, что мы говорим на эту тему.
I will tell you what we are saying on this matter and what we are conveying to the US leadership.
That actually sounds like a
If you
great
really
idea.
want to stop fighting, You need to stop supplying weapons.
I want a
It
fluffer
will be
nutter
over
sundae
within a
with
few
peanut butter
weeks.
sauce
That's it. And then we can agree on some terms.
and nuts.
Before you do that, stop.
That'd be pretty great.
What's easier? Why would I call him? What should I talk to him about? Or beg him for what?
And what messages do you get back?
You're going to deliver such and such weapons to Ukraine? Oh, I'm afraid. Please don't. What is there to talk about?
Do you think NATO is worried about this becoming a global war or a nuclear conflict?
At least that's what they're talking about. And they're trying to intimidate their own population with an imaginary Russian threat. This is an obvious fact. And thinking people, not Philistines, but thinking people, analysts, those who are engaged in real politics, just smart people understand perfectly well that this
I
is
will
a fake.
complain if I fucking feel
They're
like
trying
it.
to
This is my
fuel the
channel.
Russian
Don't tell me
threat.
what to say.
The threat I think you're referring to is a Russian invasion.
You're
of
welcome to go watch
Poland,
it on your own. You don't have to be
Latvia,
here.
Expansionist behavior. Can you imagine a scenario where you sent Russian troops to Poland?
Only in one case, if Poland attacks Russia. Why? Because we have no interest in Poland, Latvia, or anywhere else. Why would we do that? We simply don't have any interest. It's just
Sure.
threat-mongering.
Well, the argument, I know
Putin.
you know this,
Sure.
is that, well, he invaded Ukraine. He has territorial aims across the continent. And you're saying unequivocally you don't.
It is absolutely out of the question. You just don't have to be any kind of analyst. It goes against common sense to get involved in some
I
kind of a
don't
global war.
believe him.
And a global war will bring all humanity to the brink of destruction. It's obvious. There are certainly means of deterrence.
I agree
They
with
have been
them. I
scaring
don't believe
everyone with us all along. Tomorrow, Russia will use tactical nuclear weapons. Tomorrow, Russia will use that. No, the day after tomorrow. So what? In order to extort additional money from US taxpayers and European
You're in
taxpayers
my house,
in the
bro.
confrontation
You're
with
in
Russia
my
in
house.
the
You
Ukrainian
can take a
theater
time
of
out.
war. The goal is to weaken Russia as much as possible.
One of our senior United States senators from the state of New York, Chuck Schumer, said yesterday, I believe, that we have to continue to fund the Ukrainian effort, or U.S. soldiers, citizens could wind up fighting there. How do you assess that?
This is a provocation, and a cheap provocation at that. I do not understand why American soldiers should fight in Ukraine. There are mercenaries from the United States there. The bigger number of mercenaries comes from Poland, with mercenaries from the United States in second place and mercenaries from Georgia in third place. Well, if somebody has the desire to send regular troops, that would certainly bring humanity to the brink of very serious global conflict. This is obvious. Do the United States need this? What for? Thousands of miles away from your national territory. Don't you have anything better to do? You have issues on the border, issues with migration, issues with the national debt, more than $33 trillion. You have nothing better to do, so you should fight in Ukraine? Wouldn't it be better to negotiate with Russia? Make an agreement, already understanding the situation that is developing today, realizing that Russia will fight for its interests to the end? And realizing this, actually return to common sense, start respecting our country and its interests, and look for certain solutions. It seems to me that this is much smarter and more rational.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
That's a good question.
You for
States.
sure.
The
I was
United
busy
States.
that day.
The United States.
Nate, do you have I did not blow up Nord Stream. Thank you, though.
У вас лично, может быть, есть алиби, у вас лично.
You personally may have an alibi, but the CIA has no such alibi.
Exactly, Putin.
Do you have evidence that NATO or the CIA did it?
Yes.
Знаете,
You know, I won't get into details, but people always say in such cases, look for someone who is interested. But in this case, we should not only look for someone who is interested, but also for someone who has capabilities. Because there may be many people interested, but not all of them are capable of sinking to the bottom of the Baltic Sea and carrying out this explosion. These two components should be connected. Who is interested and who is capable of doing it?
But I'm confused. I mean, that's the biggest act of industrial terrorism ever, and it's the largest emission of CO2 in history. Okay, so if you had evidence, and presumably given your security services, your intel services, you would, that NATO, the US, CIA, the West did this, why wouldn't you present it and win a propaganda victory?
In the war of propaganda, it is very difficult to defeat the United States because the United States controls all the world's media and many European media. The ultimate beneficiary of the biggest European media are American financial institutions. Don't you know that? So it is possible to get involved in this work, but it is cost prohibitive, so to speak. We can simply shine the spotlight on our sources of information, and we will not achieve results. It is clear to the whole world what happened, and even American analysts talk about it directly. It's true.
Yes, but here's a question you may be able to answer. You worked in Germany, famously. The Germans clearly know that their NATO partner did this, but it damaged their economy greatly. It may never recover. Why are they being silent about it? That's very confusing.
Well, what are they going to say?
Why wouldn't the Germans say something?
What are they going to say? They're going to take the side of Russia over the United States? That wouldn't be very smart.
This also confuses me. But today's German leadership is guided by the interests of the collective West rather than its national interests. Otherwise, it is difficult to explain the logic of their action or inaction. After all, it is not only about Nord Stream 1, which was blown up, and the Nord Stream 2 was damaged. But one pipe is safe and sound, and gas can be supplied to Europe through it. But Germany does not open it. We're ready, please. There's another route through Poland called Yamal Europe, which also allows for large flow. Poland has closed it, but Poland pecks from the German hand. It receives money from the pan-European funds, and Germany is the main donor to these pan-European funds. Germany feeds Poland to a certain extent, and they close their route to Germany. Why? I don't understand. Ukraine, to which the Germans supply weapons and give money. Germany is the second sponsor of the United States.
Putin's doing this thing where he's throwing everyone under the bus, but he's acting as though he doesn't understand why they're doing what he's like. Oh, let me. What is an example? What is an example of this? It would be like if I said, I just don't understand why the conservatives always act like they want to lose. It is a mystery to me. They have all the capability to win. They claim to be the silent majority, which means they think they're the majority, and yet every single thing they do is designed to lose. I just don't understand why they do that. They should really stop doing that. Like, they would be better if they tried to win. That's like what Putin's doing with all these other countries. That's his Libra showing.
In terms of financial aid to Ukraine, there are two gas routes through Ukraine. They simply closed one route. The Ukrainians open the second route and please get gas from Russia. They do not open it. Why don't the Germans say, look guys, we give you money and weapons. Open up the valve, please. Let the gas from Russia pass through for us. We're buying liquefied gas at exorbitant prices in Europe, which brings the level of our competitiveness and economy.
I wonder if Putin has like a sock account on Twitter where he just trolls people, because he's obviously trolling all of us in this entire interview. Like, do you guys think Putin has like a secret sock account on Twitter where he's just like fucking around?
Economy in general down to zero. Do you want us to give you money? Let us have the decent existence. Make money for our economy, because this is where the money we give you comes from. They refuse to do so. Why? Ask them. That is what is like in their heads. Those are highly incompetent people.
Well, maybe the world is breaking into two hemispheres, one with cheap energy, the other without. And I want to ask you that. If we're now a multipolar world, obviously we are, can you describe the blocks of alliances? Who is in each side, do you think?
Listen, you have said that the world is breaking into two hemispheres. A human brain is divided into two hemispheres. One is responsible for one type of activities, the other one is more about creativity and so on. But it is still one and the same head. The world should be a single whole. Security should be shared rather than meant for the golden billion. That is the only scenario where the world could be stable, sustainable, and predictable. Until then, while the head is split in two parts, it is an illness, a serious adverse condition. It is a period of severe disease that the world is going through now. But I think that thanks to honest journalism, this work is akin to work of the doctors. This could somehow be remedied.
Well, let's just give one example, the US dollar, which has kind of united the world in a lot of ways, maybe not to your advantage, but certainly to ours. Is that going away as the reserve currency, the universally accepted currency? How have sanctions, do you think, changed the dollar's place in the world?
You know, to use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the US political leadership.
I would actually agree with that.
The dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power. I think everyone understands very well that no matter how many dollars are printed, they are quickly dispersed all over the world. Inflation in the United States is minimal. It's about 3 or 3.4%, which is, I think, totally acceptable for the US. But they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about? It is about the emission. Nevertheless, it is the main weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world. As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power. I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake. Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world. What did we have here? Until 2022, about 80% of Russian foreign trade transactions were made in US dollars.
Oh, he's talking to Dan. He's talking to Dan. Okay.
US dollars accounted for approximately 50% of our transactions with third countries, while currently it is down to 13%. It wasn't us who banned the use of the US dollar.
Yeah, well, fuck you too, Dan Crenshaw. Fuck you too.
We had no such intention. It was decision of the United States to restrict our transactions in US dollars. I think it is complete foolishness from the point of view of the interests of the United States itself and its taxpayers, as it damages the US economy, undermines the power of the United States across the world. By the way, our transactions in yuan accounted for about 3%. Today, 34.
You know what, Dan Crenshaw? You had to ruin a perfectly good fucking eye patch. All right? I met you in person. I even have a picture with you back when we all had hope for you, and you're really sexy in person, bro. And you got that eye patch, and you do that action movie thing, and it's really, really hot. And then you turn out to be a fucking neocon WEF douchebag. Like, fuck you, Dan Crenshaw. People like you are the problem in the world. I know that's not actually Dan Crenshaw. But I'm never going to see Dan Crenshaw again, so I had to get my feelings out somewhere. Yeah, literally, Dan Crenshaw can literally go fuck himself, literally.
4% of our transactions are made in rubles, and about as much, a little over 34% in yuan. Why did the United States do this? My only guess is self-conceit. They probably thought it would lead to full collapse, but nothing collapsed. Moreover, other countries, including oil producers, are thinking of and already accepting payments for oil in yuan. Do you even realize what is going on or not? Does anyone in the United States realize this?
No.
What are you doing? You are cutting yourself off. All experts say this.
Oh, good.
Ask any intelligent and thinking person in the United States what the dollar means for the US.
But
you're killing it with your own hands.
I think that's I think that's a fair assessment. The question is what comes next, and maybe you trade one colonial power for another, much less sentimental and forgiving colonial power. I mean, is the BRICS, for example, in danger of being completely dominated by the Chinese economy?
China is going to red dawn our asses so badly someday.
Do you worry about that?
Well, we have heard those boogeyman stories before. It is a boogeyman story. We're neighbors with China. You cannot choose neighbors just as you cannot choose close relatives. We share a border of 1,000 kilometers with them. This is number one. Second, we have a centuries-long history of coexistence. We're used to it. Third, China's foreign policy philosophy is not aggressive. Its idea is to always look for compromise, and we can see that. The next point is as follows. We are always told the same boogeyman story, and here it goes again, through an euphemistic form, but it is still the same boogeyman story. The cooperation with China keeps increasing. The pace at which China's cooperation with Europe is growing is higher and greater than that of the growth of Chinese-Russian cooperation. Ask Europeans, aren't they afraid? They might be, I don't know. But they are still trying to access China's market at all costs, especially now that they are facing economic problems. Chinese businesses are also exploring the European market. Do Chinese businesses have small presence in the United States? Yes, the political decisions are such that they are trying to limit their cooperation with China. It is to your own detriment, Mr. Tucker, that you are limiting cooperation with China. You are hurting yourself. It is a delicate matter, and there are no silver bullet solutions, just as it is with the dollar. So, before introducing any illegitimate sanctions, illegitimate in terms of the Charter of the United Nations, one should think very carefully. For decision makers, this appears to be a problem.
So you said a moment ago that the world would be a lot better if it weren't broken into competing alliances, if there was cooperation globally. One of the reasons you don't have that is because the current American administration is dead set against you. Do you think if there were a new administration after Joe Biden that you would be able to reestablish communication with the US government? Or does it not matter who the president is?
Сейчас скажу, но чтобы закончить предыдущий вопрос.
I will tell you, but let me finish the previous thought. We, together with my colleague and friend, President Xi
Putin is not
Jinping,
going to answer any
set a
questions
goal
he
to
doesn't want to
reach
answer. This is
$200
hilarious.
billion of mutual trade with China this year. We have exceeded this level. According to our figures, our bilateral trade with China totals already
Hang on.
$230 billion.
Hang on. If anyone muted Dan Crenshaw, like, I'm going to go back and look and see who muted Dan Crenshaw. Don't do that shit. Come on. Kino, what the hell, Kino? I see it was you. No muting Dan Crenshaw. I didn't authorize that.
And the Chinese statistics says it is $240 billion. One more important thing. Our trade is well balanced, mutually complementary in high tech, energy, scientific research, and development. It is very
You're
balanced.
still an asshole, Dan. I don't forgive you.
As for BRICS, where Russia took over the presidency this year, the BRICS countries are, by and large, developing very rapidly. Look, if memory serves me right, back in 1992, the share of the G7 countries in the world economy amounted to 47%, whereas in 2022, it was down to, I think, a little over 30%. The BRICS countries accounted for only 16% in 1992, but now their share is greater than that of the G7.
I'm seriously thinking
It
about
has nothing
stabbing
to do
myself in
with
the
the
eye
events
with
in
a fork
Ukraine.
right now.
This is due to the trends of global development and world economy, as I mentioned just now.
I feel like I'm back in international relations
inevitable.
class in college.
This will keep happening. It is
I didn't
like
like that
the
class
rise
then
of the
either.
sun. You cannot prevent the sun from rising. You have to adapt to it. How do the United States adapt? With the help of force, sanctions, pressure, bombings, and use of armed forces. This is about self-conceit. Your political establishment does not understand that the world is changing under objective circumstances. And in order to preserve your
I would
level,
look cool
even
with
if
an eye
someone
patch.
aspires,
Maybe I
pardon me,
should get an
to
eye
the
patch
level
just
of
because.
dominance, you have to make the right decisions in a competent and timely.
When I was working on my dissertation, we had to do these seminars with like professors that like walked us through the dissertation process and stuff like that. And so the first one I ever did, there was this old ass professor, and he had like white hair, and he was like one of those crazy guys, and he was wearing an eye patch the entire, like, I was there for 3 days, and he was wearing an eye patch the whole time. And then on the 3rd day, we found out he didn't really need the eye patch. He was just wearing the eye patch to be intimidating. That's the type of person I hope to grow into as I age. Obviously, aging meaning I'm 29 right now, but as I get older, I would someday like to be like an uppity lady that wears an eye patch just because.
Manner. Such brutal actions, including with regard to Russia and, say, other countries, are counterproductive. This is an obvious fact. It has already become evident. You just asked me if another leader comes and changes something. It is not about the leader. It is not about the personality of a particular person. I had a very good relationship with, say, Bush. I know that in the United States, he was portrayed as some kind of a country boy who does not understand much. I assure you that this is not the case. I think he made a lot of mistakes with regard to Russia, too. I told you about 2008 and the decision in Bucharest to open the NATO's doors for Ukraine and so on. That happened during his presidency. He actually exercised pressure on the Europeans. But in general, on a personal human level, I had a very good relationship with him. He was no worse than any other American or Russian or European politician. I assure you, he understood what he was doing as well as others. I had such a personal relationship with Trump as well. It is not about the personality of the leader. It is about the elite's mindset. If the idea of domination at any cost, based also on forceful actions, dominates the American society, nothing will change. It will only get worse. But if, in the end, one comes to the awareness that the world has been changing due to the objective circumstances, and that one should be able to adapt to them in time, using the advantages that the US still has today, then perhaps something may change. Look, China's economy has become the first economy in the world in purchasing power parity. In terms of volume, it overtook the US a long time ago. The USA comes second, then India, 1.5 billion people, and then Japan, with Russia in the 5th place. Russia was the first economy in Europe last year.
Breaking news, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has said somewhere that the president's press conference this evening further confirmed on live television what the special counsel report outlined. He is not fit to be president. I cannot believe we watched. I'm still reeling from the meltdown that we watched in real time. That was that Joe Biden. Thank God we watched it. We all witnessed a moment in history when a presidency imploded right in front of us in real time. I mean, they were going to try to get him out one way or the other, but we witnessed Biden standing on the sidewalk with the entire Democratic Party shoving him under the bus that's coming screaming down the street. Oh God, I do kind of want to watch it again. I do. Do you guys want to watch the Biden press conference again? Does anyone want to do that? One, if you want to watch the Biden press conference again. Two, if you want to keep watching Vladimir Putin's 2-hour-long land blessing of Ukraine. One, if we want to watch the Joe Biden press conference debacle again just for a break. Two, if we want to keep listening to Putin. One. Okay. Let me get it loaded up. Oh, there's a sign language interpreter now. Oh no, that's not the one I was watching. That's the previous one. Hang on. It's only 12 minutes long. We can do this again, guys. We can do it again. Okay, I'm seeing. No, Kino, you can't. Kino, stop voting more than. Stop spamming. We're watching it just because Kino is spamming my chat. Okay, we're taking a break. We're gonna go relive the Biden press conference again. For anyone that didn't see it, it's only 12 minutes long. Everyone, calm down.
Let me say a few things before I take your questions. As you know, the special counsel released his findings today about their look into my handling of classified documents. I was pleased to see he reached a firm conclusion that no charges should be brought against me in this case.
Because you're not mentally competent to stand trial.
This was an exhaustive investigation going back more than 40 years, even into the 1970s when I was still a new United States Senator. The special counsel acknowledged I cooperated completely. I did not throw up any roadblocks.
Look at his face.
I sought no delays.
Look at his
In
eyes.
fact, I was so determined to give the special counsel
Why are
what
they
he needed.
black?
I went forward with a 5-hour in-person interview over 2 days on October the 8th and 9th of last year, even though Israel had just been attacked by Hamas on the 7th and I was very occupied. It was in the middle of handling an international crisis. I was especially pleased to see special counsel make clear the stark distinction and difference between this case and Mr. Trump's case.
And this is good too, because we have a direct comparison of Putin versus Biden. Listen, I'm not commenting on the content of on Putin's character in this, but who do you think is a more capable leader right now? Putin, who just gave us an hour-long history lesson going back to the fucking 1600s? or Joe Biden, who is going to yell at the press and call the president of Egypt the president of Mexico. Like, this is the reality that we are in. And I blame the Republicans because they do this Republicans, even if they are handed it on a silver platter, they still lose to this. And they're probably going to lose to the Democrats in November too. And no one wants to be honest about this, but they're probably going to lose again. I don't care if Biden gets pulled off the ticket. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Biden getting pulled off the ticket actually makes it more likely that the Republicans are going to lose to whoever the nominee is. And then we're going to get stuck with that fresh hell, which is probably going to be worse than Biden anyway.
Special counsel wrote, and I quote, "Several material distinctions between Mr. Trump's case and Mr. Biden's are clear," continuing to quote, "Most notably, after given multiple chances to return classified documents to avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it. In contrast," he went on to say, "Mr. Biden turned in classified documents to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, consented to the search of multiple locations, including his home, sat for a voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation," end of quote. I've seen the headlines since the report was released about my willful retention of documents. These assertions are not only misleading, they're just plain wrong. On page 215, if you had a chance, I know it's a thick document. On page 215 of the report of the special counsel found the exact opposite. Here's what he wrote. "There is in fact a shortage of evidence that I willfully retained classified materials related to Afghanistan." On page 12, the special counsel also wrote for another documents, "The decision to decline criminal charges was straightforward. The evidence suggests that Mr. Biden did not willfully retain these documents. The evidence said I did not willfully retain these documents. In addition, I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died."
And now Biden's going to cry,
and
he's going to get dementia rage and cry at the same
When I
time.
was asked the question, I thought to myself, wasn't any of their damn business. Let me tell you something. Some of you have commented, I wear since the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from Our Lady of. Every Memorial Day, we hold a service.
This is a dementia-ridden grandfather.
Friends and family and the people who loved him. I don't need anyone. I don't need anyone to remind me when he passed away or passed away. Simple truth is I sat for a 5-hour interview over 2 days of events going back 40 years. At the same time I was managing international crisis, their task was to make a decision about whether to move forward with charges in this case. That's their decision to make. That's the counsel's decision to make. That's his job. And they decided not to move forward.
Wow.
For any extraneous commentary, they
fair
don't
point, Brucey.
know what they're talking about. It has no place in this report. The bottom line is the matter is now closed. I'm going to continue what I've always focused on, my job of being President of the United States of America. Now, thank you, and I'll take some questions.
Oh, good.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally out.
How bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak.
Look at that. My memory is so bad, I let you speak. What does that even mean?
That's
Your
my
memory has gotten worse, Mr.
No, look,
President.
my memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen? You know, I guess
because you have a team of people working for you, Joe, while you were taking a nap.
Have concerns about your age. How are you going to assuage them? And do you fear that this report is only going to fuel further concerns?
Look at the eyes.
Only by some of you.
Mr. President, cleared up criminal liability today. Do you take responsibility for at least being careless with classified material?
He looks scared.
I take responsibility for not having seen exactly what my staff was doing. It goes in and points out things that appeared in my garage, things that came out of my home, things that were moved not by me, but my staff.
Mr. President, for months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, watch me. Many American people have been watching and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
They express concerns about your mental acuity. They say that you are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your answer to that question?
Because I'm the most qualified person in this country to be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
Do you believe that?
The vein on the side of his head.
The names of world leaders.
I did not share classified information. I did not share it with my ghostwriter. I did not. Guarantee you did not. Well, no, he did not say that. He did not say that. Well, let me answer your question. The fact of the matter is, what I didn't want repeated, I didn't want him to know, and I didn't read it to him, was I had written a long memorandum to President Obama why we should not be in Afghanistan. And I was multiple pages. And so what I was referring to, I said classified. I should have said should be private because it was a contact between the president and the vice president as to what was going on. That's what he was referring to. It was not classified information in that document. That was not classified.
Yo, again, conservatives, because I know these are conservatives because this is what conservatives say. The Putin interview is not live. It is on demand. You are retarded if you think this press conference was about deflecting from the Putin interview where Putin hasn't said anything interesting. That's retarded, conservatives. Be smarter than that, conservatives, because if you guys don't start removing your heads from your asses, you are going to lose again in November because you guys haven't bothered to do math to know that you can't possibly win right now in November, and it doesn't even matter who's on the Democratic ticket. So perhaps you should stop engaging in so much conspiratorial bullshit that doesn't even make sense, given that it's an on-demand interview that you can literally watch any goddamn time. And maybe focus on actually winning. Rottweiler, did I miss a super chat? I apologize. I didn't see it. My prediction is that Michelle Obama will be the Dems' secret weapon. Newsom simply is not presidential, and Nikki Newcomb is going down in flames. Yeah.
When you look back at this incident, is there anything you would do differently now? And do you think that a special prosecutor should have been appointed in the first place in both of these cases?
First of all, what I would have done is overseen the transfer of the material that was in my office.
Republicans, you should be thanking your lucky stars for this.
If I go back, I didn't have the responsibility to that. That was my staff was supposed to do that, and they referenced that in the report. And my staff did not do it in the way that, for example, I didn't know how half the boxes got in my garage until I found out staff gathered them up, put them together, and took them to the garage in my home. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. It was in my house. It wasn't out in, like in Mar-a-Lago, in a public place where, and none of it was high classified. Didn't have any of that red stuff on it. You know what I mean? Around the corners? None of that. And so
this is the Democrats serving Joe Biden up on the sacrificial
moved and where. I thought they were being moved to the archives. I thought all of us being moved. That's what I thought. Now, what was the last part of your question?
Whether a special counsel should have been appointed in this case and in the case of your rival president.
Biden, my memory is just fine. Also, Biden, what was the second part of your question that you asked just like 2 minutes ago?
I think a special counsel should have been appointed. And the reason I think a special counsel should have been appointed is because I did not want to be in a position that they looked at Trump and weren't going to look at me, just like they looked at the vice president. And the fact is they made a firm conclusion. I did not break the law, period. Thank you all very, very much.
This is the best part. Watch this. Watch this. This is the best part. Where it's like he's almost out. The staff are like trying to get him out. No. Biden just unfucked himself.
I'm of the
good.
view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate.
Egypt,
to allow
not Mexico.
humanitarian
Egypt.
material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. I talked to Bibi to open the gate on the Israeli side. I've been pushing really hard to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza. There are a lot of innocent people who are starving, a lot of innocent people who are in trouble and dying, and it's got to stop, number one. Number two, I was also in a position that I'm the guy that made the case that we have to do much more to increase the amount of material going in, including fuel, including other items. I've been on the phone with the Qataris, I've been on the phone with the Egyptians, I've been on the phone with the Saudis to get as much aid as we possibly can into Gaza. There are innocent people, innocent women and children who are also in badly in need of help. And so that's what we're pushing. And I'm pushing very hard now to deal with this hostage ceasefire because, I've been working tirelessly in this deal. How can I say this without revealing it? To lead to a sustained pause in
Sustained pause means ceasefire.
the actions taking place in the Gaza Strip.
He done fucked
And,
himself good.
Because I think if we can get the delay for that, the initial delay, I think that we would be able to extend that so that we could increase the prospect that this fighting in Gaza changes. There's also a negotiation.
Listen to what he just said. This is people are not talking about. This is important. He's calling for a fucking ceasefire. Now, listen, I think there is a genocide going on in Gaza, so I'm completely in favor of the ceasefire. I don't think any of this stuff. I'm not pro-Israel. I'm not pro-Palestine. I'm definitely not pro-Hamas. I am anti-war and anti-genocide. But what I do know is that Biden just said that he wants a sustained pause with the hope that it all just ends. And that is basically the same thing as a ceasefire. And that's really going to piss off the Israelis. And that's really going to piss off the Jews in the United States, too, the Zionist Jews. And where do you think Biden's getting a lot of his campaign money from? That's the biggest fuck up. People can say all they want that the biggest fuck up is Biden confusing the president of Egypt with the president of Mexico after coming out and assuring everyone that his mental acuity is just perfect. But no, that is the biggest fuck up. The accidental announcement that he's kind of sort of calling for a ceasefire, but he didn't really say that, but he did say that. That's the fuck up. The rest of it's bad too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the rest of it isn't all F2, but that's the knife. That's the thing that's going to get him right there.
You may recall in the very beginning, right before Hamas attacked, I was in contact with the Saudis and others to work out a deal where they would recognize Israel's right to exist, make them part of the Middle East, recognize them fully, in return for certain things that the United States would commit to do. And the commitment that we were proposing to do related to two items. I'm not going to go in detail, but one of them was to deal with the protection against their arch enemy to the northwest, northeast, I should say. The second one, by providing ammunition and material for them to defend themselves. Coincidentally, that's the time frame when this broke out. I have no proof what I'm about to say, but it's not unreasonable to suspect that
I have no proof of what I'm about to say.
Understood what was about to take place and wanted to break it up before it happened.
That's it. Yo. That's something else. That's something else right there. All right, guys. I'm going to put the Putin interview back on. And I need to pee. I need to take a bathroom break. So I'm going to put the Putin interview on. I want you guys to take good notes. Let me know if anything happens. I'll be right back. Okay?
Despite all the sanctions and restrictions. Is it normal from your point of view? Sanctions, restrictions, impossibility of payments in dollars, being cut off from SWIFT services, sanctions against our ships carrying oil, sanctions against airplanes, sanctions in everything, everywhere. The largest number of sanctions in the world which are applied against Russia. And we have become Europe's first economy during this time. The tools that US uses don't work. Well, one has to think about what to do. If this realization comes to the ruling elites, then yes, then the first person of the state will act in anticipation of what the voters and the people who make decisions at various levels expect from this person. Then maybe something will change.
But you're describing two different systems. You say the leader acts in the interest of the voters, but you also say these decisions are not made by the leader, they're made by the ruling classes. You've run this country for so long, you've known all these American presidents. What are those power centers in the United States, do you think? Like, who actually makes the decisions?
I don't know. America is a complex country, conservative on one hand, rapidly changing on the other. It's not easy for us to sort it all out. Who makes decisions in the elections? Is it possible to understand this when each state has its own legislation? Each state regulates itself? Someone can be excluded from elections at the state level. It is a two-stage electoral system. It is very difficult for us to understand it. Certainly, there are two parties that are dominant, the Republicans and the Democrats. And within this party system, the centers that make decisions, that prepare decisions. Then, look, why, in my opinion, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, such an erroneous, crude, completely unjustified policy of pressure was pursued against Russia? After all, this is a policy of pressure. NATO expansion, support for the separatists in Caucasus, creation of a missile defense system. These are all elements of pressure. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Then, dragging Ukraine into NATO is all about pressure, pressure, pressure. Why? I think, among other things, because excessive production capacities were created. During the confrontation with the Soviet Union, there were many centers created and specialists on the Soviet Union who could not do anything else. They convinced the political leadership that it is necessary to continue chiseling Russia, to try to break it up.
Really?
On this territory, several quasi-state entities, and to subdue them in a divided form, to use their combined potential for the future struggle with China. This is a mistake, including the excessive potential of those who worked for the confrontation with the Soviet Union. It is necessary to get rid of this. There should be new, fresh forces, people who look into the future and understand what is happening in the world. Look at how Indonesia is developing. 600 million people. Where can we get away from that? Nowhere. We just have to assume that Indonesia will enter it is already in the club of the world's leading economies, no matter who likes it or dislikes it. Yes, we understand and are aware that in the United States, despite all the economic problems, the situation is still normal, with the economy growing decently. The GDP is growing by 2.5%, if I'm not mistaken. But if we want to ensure the future, then we need to change our approach to what is changing. As I already said, the world would nevertheless change, regardless of how the developments in Ukraine end. The world is changing. In the United States themselves, experts are writing that the United States are nonetheless gradually changing their position in the world. It is your experts who write that. I just read them. The only question is how this would happen, painfully and quickly, or gently and gradually. And this is written by people who are not anti-American. They simply follow global development trends. That's it. And in order to assess them and change policies, we need people who think, look forward, can analyze and recommend certain decisions at the level of political leaders.
I just have to ask, you've said clearly that NATO expansion eastward is a violation of the promise you all were made in 1990. It's a threat to your country. Right before you sent troops into Ukraine, the Vice President of the United States went to the Munich Security Conference and encouraged the President of Ukraine to join NATO. Do you think that was an effort to provoke you into military action?
Yes.
Мы просто, я еще раз повторяю, мы многократно предлагали.
I repeat once again, we have repeatedly proposed to seek a solution to the problems that arose in Ukraine after 2014 coup d'etat through peaceful means. But no one listened to us. And moreover, the Ukrainian leaders who were under the complete US control suddenly declared that they would not comply with the Minsk agreements. They disliked everything there and continued military activity in that territory.
Шло освоение этой территории натовскими военными структурами. Под видом различных центров.
And in parallel, that territory was being exploited by NATO military structures under the guise of various personnel training and retraining centers. They essentially began to create bases there. That's all. Ukraine announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality, while passing the laws that limit the rights of non-titular nationalities in Ukraine. Ukraine, having received all these southeastern territories as a gift from the Russian people, suddenly announced that the Russians were a non-titular nationality in that territory. Is that normal? All this put together led to the decision to end the war that neo-Nazis started in Ukraine in 2014.
Do you think Zelensky has the freedom to negotiate a settlement to this conflict?
I don't know the details. Of course, it's difficult for me to judge. But I believe he has, in any case, he used to have. His father fought against the fascists, Nazis, during World War II. I once talked to him about this. I said, Volodya, what are you doing?
Does anyone actually believe that Putin gives a rat's ass about Nazis in Ukraine? Is this a serious this is like one of those I believe that Putin cares as much about Nazis in Ukraine as I believe that the social justice left cares about Nazis in America. You know what I'm saying? It's like no one believes this.
Why are you supporting neo-Nazis in Ukraine today while your father fought against fascism? He was a frontline soldier. I will not tell you what he answered. This is a separate topic, and I think it's incorrect for me to do so. But as to the freedom of choice, why not? He came to power on the expectations of Ukrainian people that he would lead Ukraine to peace. He talked about this. It was thanks to this that he won the elections overwhelmingly. But then, when he came to power, in my opinion, he realized two things. Firstly, it is better not to clash with neo-Nazis and nationalists because they are aggressive and very active. You can expect anything from them. And secondly, the US-led West supports them and will always support those who antagonize with Russia. It is beneficial and safe. So he took the relevant position despite promising his people to end the war in Ukraine. He deceived his voters.
But do you think at this point, as of February 2024, he has the latitude, the freedom to speak with you or your government directly about putting an end to this, which clearly isn't helping his country or the world? Can he do that, do you think?
Ну, а почему нет? Он же
Why
считается
not?
главой государства.
He considers himself
Хотя
head of
мы
state.
считаем в
He
России,
won
что
the
всё, что
elections.
произошло после 2014
Although we
года,
believe in Russia that the coup d'etat
первичным
is the
источником
primary
власти
source of
является
power
власть
for
переворот.
everything
И в
that
этом смысле
happened after
большинство власть
2014.
является ущербной.
And in this
Но
sense,
он
even
считает
today,
себя
government
президентом,
is flawed.
в этом качестве его
But
признали
he considers
Соединенные
himself the
Штаты,
president,
вся
and
Европа,
he
и
is
практически
recognized
весь
by the
остальной мир.
United States,
Почему нет?
all of Europe, and
Мы же
practically the rest of the
это
world in such a capacity. Why not? He
договорились,
can.
он же знал об этом. Более
We
того,
negotiated with
руководитель
Ukraine in
переговорной
Istanbul.
группы
We agreed.
Арахамия,
He
по-моему,
was aware of
он
this.
до сих пор
Moreover,
возглавляет
the
фракцию,
negotiation group leader, Mr.
правящей
Arahamia is
партии,
his last name,
правящей партии.
I believe still
Партии
heads the
президента
faction of the ruling
в
party,
Раде. Он же
the party
возглавляет
of the
до сих пор
president in the Rada.
президента в Раде,
He
в
still heads the
парламенте.
presidential faction in the Rada, the
Он даже
country's
поставил свою
parliament.
подпись
He still sits
предварительно
there.
на этом документе.
He even put his preliminary
А потом
signature
он
on the
же
document
публично
I am
на весь
telling
мир
you about.
заявил: мы были
But then
готовы
he
подписать
publicly
это.
stated
Тут
to the
приехал
whole
господин
world,
Джонсон,
we were ready to
тогда
sign this
премьер-министр
document, but Mr.
отговорил
Johnson,
нас об этом
then the Prime
и
Minister
сказал,
of
что
Great
лучше
Britain,
воевать с Россией.
came and
Они нам все
dissuaded us
дадут
from
для
doing
того,
this,
чтобы
saying
мы
it
вернули
was better to fight
утраченное,
Russia. They would give everything
Fucking
needed for us to
Boris.
return what was
И
lost
мы,
during the clashes
сказал,
with Russia,
согласились с этим
and we
предложением. Вот
agreed with
смотрите,
this
что
proposal. Look,
опубликовано.
his statement
Он
has been
сказал это
published. He
публично.
said it publicly.
Могут они к
Can
этому
they
вернуться?
return to this or
Look at
not?
Tucker's
Вопрос.
face.
The
Хотят они или
question
нет?
is, do they
А
want
после
it or
этого
not?
еще господин президент
Further
Украины
on, President of Ukraine
издал
issued a decree
декрет,
prohibiting
запрещающий
negotiations
переговоры.
with us.
Ну пусть он отменит
Let
этот
him
декрет.
cancel that
Мы же не
decree,
отказывались никогда от
and
переговоров.
that's it.
Вот нам все
We have
время
never
пишут,
refused
готова Россия,
negotiations,
готова. Да
indeed.
мы не отказывались.
We hear all the
Они же
time, is
публично,
Russia ready?
публично отказали.
Yes,
Ну
we
что
have
же,
not refused. It
пускай
was them
отменяется
who
он
publicly
декрет и
refused.
вступает в переговоры.
Well, let him cancel his
А то,
decree
что они
and enter into
подчинились
negotiations.
требованию либо
We
уговорам
have never
бывшего
refused.
премьер-министра Великобритании господина Джонсона,
And the fact
ну,
that
мне
they
кажется, что это
obeyed the demand or
нелепо и
persuasion of Mr. Johnson, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain,
печально, потому что,
seems ridiculous
как
and
сказал
very sad to
господин
me,
Арахамия, мы еще
because,
1,5
as
года назад
Mr.
могли
Arakamia put it,
прекратить эти
we could have stopped those hostilities with
Но
war a
раз
year and a
англичане
half ago
уговорили,
already.
и мы от этого отказались.
But the British persuaded
Нет
us and we
Джонсона,
refused
а
this.
война продолжается.
Where is Mr. Johnson now? And the war continues.
That's a good question. Where do you think he is, and why did he do that?
Да хрен его знает, о чем я сам не понимаю. Общая
Hell
установка была.
knows.
Почему-то
I
у всех
don't
сложилась
understand it
иллюзия,
myself.
что Россию можно победить на поле боя.
There was a general starting point. For some
Османы
reason, everyone had the illusion that Russia could be defeated on the battlefield.
от чистого сердца, но
Because of arrogance, because of a pure heart, but not because of a great mind.
You've described the connection between Russia and Ukraine. You've described Russia itself a couple of times as Orthodox. That's central to your understanding of Russia. You said you're Orthodox. What does that mean for you? You're a Christian leader by your own description. So what effect does that have on you?
You know,
знаете, вот
as I already mentioned, in
как я уже сказал, в
988,
985
Prince
году
Vladimir himself was
Vladimir
baptized
крестил.
following the
Сам
example of
крестился
his
по примеру
grandmother,
своей
Princess
бабушки, Марии
Olga.
Ольги.
And then he
Потом
baptized his
крестил
squad.
свою дружину,
And
потом
then,
постепенно
gradually,
через
over the
лет
course of
получилось
several
много
years,
славян.
he baptized all the Rus.
Язычница от
It was a
язычников
lengthy
христиан.
process, from
Много.
pagans to Christians.
Но в
It
конечном
took many
итоге вот
years.
это православие
But in
восточное
the end, this
христианство, оно
orthodoxy,
глубоко
Eastern
укоренилось
Christianity,
в
deeply
I'm gonna ask my husband when we're done watching this if this is like a Russian thing or an Eastern European thing to have like to be asked a question and then to tell some sort of like flowery story that meanders around the answer is like is this just something that is this like a cultural thing that they do? Because that's what's happening every time. Like Tucker asks a question, and then Putin's like, "Let me tell you about my grandmother," and and all this, and then this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And is this like, I don't know. Does anyone know?
It rooted itself in the consciousness of the Russian people. When Russia expanded and absorbed other nations who profess Islam, Buddhism, and Judaism, Russia has always been very loyal to those people who profess
I did
other
read
religions.
Dostoevsky at some point,
This
and
is her
it did
strength.
sound like this. That's
This
kind of
is
what that was my
absolutely
thought.
clear. And the fact is that the main postulates, main values are very similar, not to say the same, in all world religions I've just mentioned, and which are the traditional religions of the Russian Federation, Russia. By the way, Russian authorities were always very careful about the culture and religion of those people who came into the Russian Empire. This, in my opinion, forms the basis of both security and stability of the Russian statehood. All the peoples inhabiting Russia basically consider it their motherhood. If, say, people move over to you or to Europe from Latin America, an even clearer and more understandable example, people come, but yet they have come to you or to European countries from their historical homeland. And people who profess different religions in Russia consider Russia their motherland. They have no other motherland. We are together. This
We're back
is
to
one big
reunifying
family,
Mother Russia.
and our traditional values are very similar. I've just mentioned one big family, but everyone has her own family. And this is the basis of our society. And if we say that the motherland and the family are specifically connected with each other, it is indeed the case, since it is impossible to ensure a normal future for our children and our families unless we ensure a normal, sustainable future for the entire country, for the motherland. That is why patriotic sentiment is so strong in Russia.
But can I say that the one way in which the religions are different is that Christianity is specifically a nonviolent religion. Jesus says, turn the other cheek, don't kill. How can a leader who has to kill, of any country, how can a leader be a Christian? How do you reconcile that to yourself?
What?
It is very easy.
You're asking Putin
when
that?
it comes
Are
to
you
protecting
serious?
oneself and one's family, one's homeland. We won't attack anyone. When did the developments in Ukraine start? Since the coup d'etat and the hostilities in Donbass began, that's when they started.
For fuck's sake.
And we're protecting our
For
people,
fuck's sake.
ourselves.
For fuck's sake. Putin's argument is that because the Ukrainians overthrew the Russian installed president like almost 10 years ago, that he was obligated to invade Ukraine out of self-defense because they overthrew the Russian installed president like 8 fucking years ago. And in addition to that, it wasn't just self-defense 8 years later. It was that he needs to denazify everything. That doesn't even make any sense.
Our homeland and our future. As for religion in general, you know, it's not about external manifestations. It's not about going to church every day or banging your head on the floor. It is in the heart. And our culture is so human-oriented. Dostoevsky, who was very well known in the West, and
by the way, just for the record, because again, my position on this entire thing is I don't think we should be involved at all in any way, but I was fully prepared to come into this interview and hear Putin say something that might change my mind about what this was, and he just hasn't said anything. But I was giving Putin a fair shake, man. I'll listen to this whole thing. I will listen to the whole rest of the interview. Maybe he will actually say something in the last 20 minutes of the interview. Who knows? But like, I was fully prepared to like be like, okay, Putin, that's a good point. Okay, I could see it that way. Fully prepared. But he wants to come out with we have to engage in self-defense because our installed president 8 years ago got overthrown by Ukrainians. And then we have to denazify everything to save Europe from the evil Nazis in Ukraine. Like, come on. That's not, no. Putin wants to reunify Mother Russia. That's what this is about. That's what it's always been about. Putin wants to reunify Mother Russia.
Genius of Russian culture, Russian literature, spoke a lot about this, about the Russian soul.
Русский человек, российский человек, он думает больше о вечном, он думает больше о ценности.
After all, Western society is more pragmatic. Russian people think more about the eternal, about moral values. I don't know, maybe you won't agree with me, but Western culture is more pragmatic after all. I'm not saying this is bad. It makes it possible for today's golden billion to achieve good success in production, even in science and so on. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that we kind of look the same, but our minds
so
are
do you
built a
see
little
the
different.
supernatural at work as you look out across what's happening in the world now? Do you see God at work? Do you ever think to yourself, these are forces that are not human?
Да нет, я, честно говоря, так не думаю. Я думаю о том, что
No, to be honest, I don't think so.
развивается вот по своим внутренним
My opinion is that the development of the world community is in accordance with the inherent laws, and those laws are what they are.
Так было всегда в истории человечества.
It's always been this way in the history of mankind. Some nations and countries rose, became stronger and more numerous, and then left the international stage, losing the status they had accustomed to. There's probably no need for me to give examples, but we could start with the Genghis Khan and horde conquerors, the Golden Horde, and then end with the Roman Empire. It seems that there has never been anything like the Roman Empire in the history of mankind. Nevertheless, the potential of the barbarians gradually grew, as did their population. In general, the barbarians were getting stronger and begun to develop economically, as we would say today. This eventually led to the collapse of the Roman Empire and the regime imposed by the Romans. However, it took 5 centuries for the Roman Empire to fall apart.
I just want to say, if you're new to my channel and you think that this is what we do all the time, normally we watch socialism and far leftists, and it's way better than this, and it's way more interesting than this. And I will show you the craziest stuff you've ever seen in your life. I promise. This is not like this. This is why I'm not doing like current news anymore, because this is boring. We're gonna finish it. We always finish it, but like, just in case anyone is new here, and this is true on Rumble as well, because I see you guys too, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m., Saturdays at 6 p.m. for Socialism Saturday. I will show you the craziest stuff on the internet that no one has ever shown you, and I'm not exaggerating by that. My chat can confirm on YouTube. Because what we do is way more interesting than this. And if you find this interesting, I just wait until you see what I have to show you with the other stuff. If you think this is interesting, there's a lot more. All right, we have like 20 minutes. 20 minutes.
Difference with what is happening now is that all the processes of change are happening at a much faster pace than in Roman times.
So when does the AI empire start, do you think?
The AI empire? That's a good question.
You're asking increasingly more complicated questions. To answer them, you need to be an expert in big numbers, big data, and AI. Mankind is currently facing many threats. Due to the genetic researches, it is now possible to create a superhuman, a specialized human being, a genetically engineered athlete, scientist, military man. There are reports that Elon Musk has already had a chip implanted in the human brain in the USA.
Yep, true.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think there's no stopping Elon Musk. He will do as he sees fit. Nevertheless, you need to find some common ground with him, search for ways to persuade him. I think he's a smart person, I truly believe he is. So you need to reach an agreement with him because this process needs to be formalized and subjected to certain rules. Humanity has to consider what is going to happen due to the newest development in genetics or in AI. One can make an approximate prediction of what will happen. Once mankind felt an existential threat coming from nuclear weapons, all nuclear nations began to come to terms with one another since they realized the negligent use of nuclear weaponry could drive humanity to extinction. It is impossible to stop research in genetics or AI today, just as it was impossible to stop the use of gunpowder back in the day. But as soon as we realize that the threat comes from unbridled and uncontrolled development of AI, or genetics, or any other field, the time will come to reach an international agreement on how to regulate these things.
I appreciate all the time you've given us. I just got to ask you one last question, and that's about someone who's very famous in the United States, probably not here, Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter. He's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
Мы столько сделали жестов доброй воли.
It's a good move by Tucker.
Мне кажется, мы исчерпали все лимиты.
We have done so many gestures of goodwill out of decency that I think we have run out of them.
Ни разу не ответил.
We have never seen anyone reciprocate to us in a similar manner.
What are you talking about?
However, in theory, we can say that we do not rule out that we can do that if our partners take reciprocal steps. When I talk about the partners, I first of all refer to special services. Special services are in contact with one another. They are talking about the matter in question. There is no taboo to settle this issue. We are willing to solve it. But there are certain terms being discussed via special services channels. I believe an agreement can be reached.
So typically, I mean, this stuff has happened for obviously centuries. One country catches another spy within its borders, it trades it for one of its own intel guys in another country. I think what makes, and it's not my business, but what makes this difference is the guy's obviously not a spy, he's a kid. And maybe he was breaking your law in some way, but he's not a super spy, and everybody knows that. And he's being held hostage in exchange, which is true. With respect, it's true, and everyone knows it's true. So maybe he's in a different category. Maybe it's not fair to ask for, you know, somebody else in exchange for letting him out. Maybe it degrades Russia to do that.
Вы знаете, можно как угодно говорить, что такое шпион, что не шпион.
You know, you can give different interpretations to what constitutes a spy, but there are certain things provided by law. If a person gets secret information and does that in a conspiratorial manner, then this is qualified as espionage. And that is exactly what he was doing. He was receiving classified, confidential information, and he did it covertly. Maybe he did that out of carelessness or his own initiative. Considering the sheer fact, this is qualified as espionage. The fact has been proven, as he was caught red-handed when he was receiving this information. If it had been some far-fetched excuse, some fabrication, something not proven, it would have been a different story then. But he was caught red-handed when he was secretly getting confidential information. What is it then?
But are you suggesting that he was working for the US government or NATO, or he was just a reporter who was given material he wasn't supposed to have? Those seem like very different things.
Я не знаю, на кого он работал. Но повторяю еще раз.
I don't know who he was working for, but I would like to reiterate that getting classified information in secret is called espionage, and he was working for the US Special Services, some other agencies. I don't think he was working for Monaco, as Monaco is hardly interested in getting that information. It is up to special services to come to an agreement. Some groundwork has been laid. There are people who, in our view, are not connected with special services. Let me tell you a story about a person serving a sentence in an allied country of the US. That person, due to patriotic sentiments, eliminated a bandit in one of the European capitals. During the events in the Caucasus, do you know what he was doing? I don't want to say that, but I will do it anyway. He was laying our soldiers, taken prisoner, on the road and then drove his car over their heads. What kind of person is that? Can he even be called human? But there was a patriot who eliminated him in one of the European capitals. Whether he did it of his own volition or not, that is a different question.
Yeah, but Evan Gershkovich didn't do that. I mean, that's a completely different. I mean, this is a 32-year-old newspaper reporter.
He committed something different. He's not just a journalist. I reiterate, he's a journalist who was secretly getting confidential information.
That's what journalists do.
Yes, it is different, but still, I'm talking about other people who are essentially controlled by the US authorities, wherever they are serving a sentence. There is an ongoing dialogue between the special services. This has to be resolved in a calm, responsible, and professional manner. They're keeping in touch, so let them do their work. I do not rule out that the person you refer to, Mr. Gershkovich, may return to his motherland. By the end of the day, it does not make any sense to keep him in prison in Russia. We want the US Special Services to think about how they can contribute to achieving the goals our special services are pursuing. We are ready to talk. Moreover, the talks are underway. And there have been many successful examples of these talks crowned with success. Probably this is going to be crowned with success as well. But we have to come to an agreement.
I hope you let him out. Mr. President, thank you.
I also want him to return to his homeland at last. I'm absolutely sincere. But let me say once again, the dialogue continues. The more public we render things of this nature, the more difficult it becomes to resolve them. Everything has to be done in calm manner.
I wonder if that's true with the war, though. Also, I mean, I want to ask one more question, which is, and maybe you don't want to say so for strategic reasons, but are you worried that what's happening in Ukraine could lead to something much larger and much more horrible? And how motivated are you just to call the US government and say, let's come to terms?
Tucker basically just pointed out it's a proxy war, by the way.
I already said that we did not refuse to talk. We're willing to negotiate. It is the Western side, and Ukraine is obviously a satellite state of the US. It is evident.
Ukraine is a
I do
satellite
not want
state of
you
the
to
US.
take it as if I'm looking for a strong
Why we
word
never
or
should have
an
gotten
insult.
involved in the first
But
place.
we both understand what is happening. The financial support, 72 billion US dollars, was
72
provided.
billion US dollars.
Germany ranks second, then other European countries come.
72
Dozens of
billion
billions of US dollars
billion
are going
course,
to
yeah.
Ukraine.
dollars.
There's a huge influx of weapons. In this case, you should tell the current Ukrainian leadership to stop and come to negotiating table, rescind this absurd
The
decree.
US should have pushed Zelensky
not
to the
refuse.
negotiating table fucking
Sure, but you
year
already
ago.
said it. I didn't think you meant it as an insult because you already said correctly, it's been reported that Ukraine was prevented from negotiating a peace settlement by the former British Prime Minister acting on behalf of the Biden administration. So of course they're a satellite. Big countries control small countries. That's not new. And that's why I asked about dealing directly with the Biden administration, which is making these decisions, not President Zelensky of Ukraine.
Если администрация Зеленского на Украине отказалась от переговоров, я исхожу из
Well,
того, что они
if the Zelensky administration in Ukraine refused to negotiate, I assume they did it under the instruction from Washington. If Washington believes it to be the wrong decision, let it abandon it. Let it find a delicate excuse so that no one is insulted. Let it come up with a way out. It was not us
Putin
who
knows
made
he's
this
at war with, and
decision.
it's
It
not
was
about
them.
Ukraine.
So let them go back on it. That is it.
Мы должны искать выход из этого неправильного решения.
However, they made the wrong decision, and now we have to look for a way out of the situation to correct their mistakes. They did it, so let them correct it themselves. We support this.
So I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what you're saying. I don't think that I am. I think you're saying you want a negotiated settlement to what's happening in Ukraine.
Правильно. Но мы
Right.
уже добились этого.
And
Мы
we made
создали
it. We prepared a huge document in Istanbul that was initialed by the head of the
который
Ukrainian
был
delegation.
парафирован
He affixed his
руководителем
signature to some of the
делегации.
provisions,
Там
not to
подписи
all of it.
стоят.
He put
Ну,
his
на,
signature, and then he
выручке
himself
договора.
said,
Всё, на
we were
выручке.
ready
Вот
to
подпись
sign it,
стоит.
and the war would
А
have been
потом он же
over long
сказал,
ago,
мы были готовы
18 months
подписать,
ago.
и война бы уже давно
However,
закончилась.
Prime Minister Johnson came,
приехал
talked us out of it,
Джонсон,
and we missed that
отговорил вас
chance.
от этого. И
Well,
вы
you missed
упустили
it,
этот
you
шанс.
made a
Вы
mistake,
упустили,
let them
совершили
get
ошибку,
back to
пусть
that,
вернутся к
that
этому.
is all.
Вот и
Why
всё.
do we have to bother
Putin's
ourselves and
basically
correct
like,
somebody
you
else's
assholes
mistakes?
fucked up. I'm not going to fix your
I know
fuck up.
one can
You need
say
to fix
it
your
is
fuck
our
up.
mistake.
Понимаю, может
It
сказать,
was
что
us who
наша ошибка,
intensified the
что
situation
мы
and decided to put an end to the war that started in 2014 in Donbass, as I have already said, by means of weapons. Let me get back to further in history. I already told you this. We were just discussing it. Let us go back to 1991, when we were promised that NATO would not expand, to 2008, when the doors to NATO opened to the declaration of state sovereignty of Ukraine, declaring Ukraine a neutral state. Let us go back to the fact that NATO and US military bases started to appear on the territory of Ukraine, creating threats to us. Let us go back to coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. It is pointless, though, isn't it? We may go back and forth endlessly, but they stopped negotiations. Is it a mistake? Yes. Correct it. We are ready. What else is needed?
Do you think it's too humiliating at this point for NATO to accept Russian control of what was 2 years ago Ukrainian territory?
Я же сказал.
I said, let them think how to do it with dignity. There are options if there is a will.
Варианты есть. Но если желание.
Up until now, there has been the uproar and screaming about inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield.
Стратегического поражения России, поражения.
Now they are apparently coming to realize that it is difficult to achieve, if possible at all. In my opinion, it is impossible by definition. It is never going to happen. It seems to me that now those who are in power in the West have come to realize this as well. If so, if the realization has set in, they have to think what to do next. We're ready for this dialogue.
Would you be willing to say, congratulations, NATO, you won, and just keep the situation where it is now?
Ну, вы знаете, это предмет переговоров.
You know, it is a subject matter for the negotiations. No one is willing to conduct, or to put it more accurately,
Точнее сказать, хотят.
they're willing, but do not know how to do it.
Я не только вижу,
I know they want
но
to.
я знаю.
It is not just I see it, but I know they do want it. But they're struggling to understand how to do it. They have driven the situation to the point where we are at. It is not us who have done that. It is our partners, opponents who have done that. Well, now let them think how to reverse the situation. We're not against it. It would be funny if it were not so sad.
Да, было бы смешно, если бы не было так грустно.
This endless mobilization in Ukraine, the hysteria, the domestic problems, sooner or later it will result in agreement.
Истерика там, внутренние проблемы.
You know, this probably sounds strange given the current situation.
Все равно мы договоримся. И
But the relations between the two peoples will be rebuilt anyway.
сегодняшней ситуации прозвучит.
It will take a lot of time, but they will heal.
Между народами восстановится. Потребуется много времени.
I'll give you very unusual examples.
Совсем приведу вам необычный пример.
There is a combat encounter on the battlefield. Here's a specific example. Ukrainian soldiers got encircled. This is an example from real life. Our soldiers were shouting to them, "There is no chance. Surrender yourselves. Come out and you will be alive." Suddenly, the Ukrainian soldiers were screaming from there in Russian, perfect Russian, saying, "Russians, do not surrender." And all of them perished. They still identify themselves as Russian. What is happening is, to a certain extent, an element of a civil war. Everyone in the West thinks that the Russian people have been split by hostilities forever.
My husband is from a Russian-speaking part of Ukraine. He speaks Russian as his primary language. He does not identify himself as Russian. That's just not true.
No, they will be reunited. The unity is still there. Why are the Ukrainian authorities dismantling the Ukrainian Orthodox Church? Because it brings together not only the territory, it brings together our souls. No one will be able to separate the soul. Shall we end here, or is there anything else?
No, I think that's great. Thank you, Mr. President.
Wow. So Putin wants to reunify Mother Russia. Tucker Carlson let Putin do a land blessing for an hour and a half. Putin knows that the war with Ukraine isn't really with Ukraine, but is with America. He's very clear on that. Putin thinks that everyone in Ukraine really considers themselves to be Russian, which is just provably not true. Putin says that his main goal with this war is to denazify Ukraine, which is also just retarded. And Joe Biden has imploded his presidency to the point where he's probably going to get removed from office, epically thrown under the bus by the entire Democratic establishment because they don't want him running for president. And I watched a Fat Studies presentation earlier today on Spy Stream where they said Eric Cartman was queer, which I'll be releasing the clip of tomorrow, probably. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. All right. Well, everyone should prepare themselves for President Kamala Harris, because that's going to be coming pretty soon. And then Kamala gets to run as the incumbent, and they're going to have to grapple with the fact that no one likes her either. And then at some point, the Republicans are going to have to deal with the fact that even with Kamala Harris as being the nominee of the Democratic Party, or if they replace Kamala with like Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom, like no matter who the Democratic nominee is, the Republicans are still probably going to lose to them, because that's how incompetent the Republican Party is. And socialists are taking over our world. We should never take our eye off the ball. Our entire country is controlled by socialists. And normally on this channel, that's what we watch, because that is what we're focused on, because the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket anyway. We may as well prepare for the oncoming socialist dystopia that we're all going to be living in within probably about 20 years or so. So that's going to be really great. That is what we do on my channel most of the time, guys. Please make sure you are subscribed on YouTube, on X, on Rumble, on whatever platform you're watching on. Please make sure you mount that like button on the way back out the door. I will be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow for happy hour, when we will drink beer and watch a woke training. For now, I will take my leave. And yeah, that's all I have. Night, guys. Thanks for hanging out.